aggroed. Currently witness 9 on the Steem blockchain. You are listening to the Minnow Mayor Town Hall, which has in fact been invaded by Steem Monsters. So let's get ready for the action, and one last quick video, and then we'll get that right into it.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. I love you.
And now, coming to you from the classiest radio station on the air, this is
Minnow Mayor Town Hall.
Boom. Boom, baby. We're going live. Welcome back. So, right now, this is one of these episodes where you probably want to, you're going to want to stream. It's going to be hard to do this if you don't get to see some of what I'm talking about here. We can talk about these things, but it might be a little bit tricky. So, okay. So, to view the screen, you're going to want to go to www.msp-waves.com/listen. If you hit that, it's going to start playing the sounds again. So you're going to want to mute one of either the Discord or the screen, or like that window, so that you're not getting my voice, in stereo with different delays. I'm sure that would be maddening. Okay, so right now what I'm doing, I have my my OBS is running. I got some screen share going, and we're going to go through a couple things. It's not going to take me all that long to get to Steem Monsters, because that's really going to be the heart of the show. I do have a couple kids screaming while it's bedtime downstairs. That sometimes happens. I thought they'd be passed out, but they're not yet. So let's just go review a couple things. So I'm aggroed. I'm witness 9. If you're not voting for witnesses, I hope that you do. You'll notice in the top right of the of this Discord group, the PalNet Discord group, there's a whole bunch of witnesses up there. These are people that help run the Minnow Support Project. Hopefully you're voting for them. One of the things that I'm going to call attention to, especially because this is a Steem Monsters inspired show, is that here's Yabamat. Yaba is a witness as well. He's not one of the top 20 witnesses. He's currently witness 31. So he could use some love too. So if you have any extra witness votes, please go do that. If you don't know, witnesses are people that run servers, and then they're also the people that help bring a lot of value to the Steem ecosystem. Some of them are devs, some of them are sort of community builders, and some of them do both. Yabamat is an incredibly talented dev. He helped build the Steam Bot Tracker website, and he helped build Steem Monsters, and he's my partner, and he could use some help here. So if you're not already voting for Yabamat, you might want to go do that. And then there's some truly excellent choices that are here. So good people, good projects. I like to talk at least a little bit about just prices. At one point I was like, all right, I'm going to go do some technical analysis, but I really don't know enough technical analysis, so I'm not even going to try to do that. All I'm really going to do is just say what current prices are, because I don't know. It's nice to have like a little bit of a written record for this. So we're like right now, Bitcoin is standing at $7,721. That to me is a pretty shitty price. We want that to be quite a bit higher. It's certainly down from the lows of 20,000. We've been in a long kind of correction here. I'm hoping that the correction is sort of over. There's lots of people that say that it isn't, but this to me looks like some consolidation. Actually, what's sort of funny is that when I look at this, I think of this, I call it like a woman's shoe. So this is sort of her leg, and then there's like 1 or 2 straps that go around her foot. And I noticed that after lots of spikes and lots of these kind of crypto charts, you get something that looks kind of like this. It's usually a lot smaller, and it's usually not for this much money, and it's usually a hell of a lot shorter. But this to me looks like one really big version of corrections that I'm pretty used to seeing. So who knows if that's going to stick or if that means anything, but that was just one observation that I had, is that looks to me like a really standard correction, just hugely blown up. We got to some conversion about Litecoin. I have some Litecoin, so I'm always checking in on this. Same kind of story here. It looks that kind of shoe graph, mostly because it just kind of follows along with what Bitcoin's going to do. So here you can see we're down here at $125. I've bought into Litecoin. I bought in like over here somewhere, and then I bought in over here somewhere. Like every time I'm ready to go buy into Litecoin, the thing like doubles or triples. So I usually have a strong affinity for Litecoin and what it does. Steam is here. It's gotten a little bit of a bounce. We're at $2.54. Um, you know, we're not doing great, but at the same time, we really are. I mean, I just want people to have some hope and some excitement for where Steam's at right now. Steam's at $2.54. Back in November, we were at 92 cents. But just back in November, there was another thing that was happening too, is that the overall Bitcoin market itself was at like 11,000. So we were at 11,092 cents for Steam. Right now, we're at almost half the price of Bitcoin and basically triple the price of Steam. I gave out a couple witness interviews this weekend, and I'm sure some of these things are going to get posted in the not too distant future. And I'm really hopeful for Steam. I mean, I think Bitcoin's in a correction. This isn't a crash. When the correction ends and the big banks and all these bastards come back in and shove money back into crypto, I think Steam is going to take off. Steam has a challenge in that the Steemit Incorporated is selling roughly 1 million Steam per month. And that's how they're operating, and that's how they're doing all their business and whatnot. That we have a lot of sell pressure that we have to compete with. But when the buy pressure comes in, especially with some of the very positive press we've been getting, I think Steam is going to go up quite a bit. I think I'm a bull. I think Bitcoin still has very much its best days ahead of it. I think we'll see $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 Bitcoin. And I don't think that prices of Steam are going to like stay there forever. I think they're going to touch something like, $50 by the end of the year per Steam. I still think that's possible. So we're going to see. We're going to see again. I'm not a technical analyst. Don't spend all your money just because I'm saying some things. But there we go. Take the fur out of your mouth. Shane broke it. You guys lost me? Am I still here? Please stop and restart the stream. Damn it. Stopping the stream. Starting the stream. Alright. Done. We'll see if people can hear me. It's a little bit heartbreaking. Kick it. Do 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 do. Dude. All right, I'm back. Do. All right, good time. So, anyways, I think that Steam is going to do quite well. I know that we have a lot of sell pressure, but I also think that there's a lot of people that are interested in purchasing this thing. The fact that China just came out and said Steam's the second best blockchain right now, like I think that's going to help pump us. SBD is having a rough go. It's sitting here at 184. That's about the lowest, shittiest point that SBD's been at. It's designed to go back to $1 and stay at $1. It's not going to do that all the time, but that's something to consider. That maybe it was just temporary that it spikes. But anyways, so I'm ready to go talk about Steem Monsters. That was roughly the 15 minutes or so of stuff that I needed to do to get here. What do I want to talk about first? I think the first thing I want to talk about, this show is going to have kind of some content that's built into it and some technicals that are built into it. And then I guess I also want to talk about this here auction. So a couple things. Let's start with the boss auction. I don't know. What do I want to start with? Let me just start with like a real basic description of this game. And there's a handful of people that still think this thing is going to be Magic the Gathering, or it's going to be Hearthstone, where I play a card, you play a card, I play a card, you play a card. This isn't like that. This game, Steem Monsters itself, maybe I should go to its page and we can kind of scroll up and down so there's something to look at here. The thing for Steem Monsters, actually, what you probably want to know is that this thing has done extraordinarily well. So we've currently raised almost 15,000 SBD and 6,000 Steem. The current plan is to go do something like, once we hit 10,000 Steem, we're going to start shoving the Steem payments that we get into powering it up, so that we have a bigger vote to try to help get content in and content spread. So we're going to eventually turn this thing into a whale if you guys keep buying cards from us. And we're going to use that to basically incentivize people to go build content. So that's some of the long-term strategy. You'll notice Steem Plus that I'm using is showing that the total value of the money that we've raised so far is $43,000. That's pretty baller. It is not a turn-based game. This is a drafting game. So how the hell does this thing even work? What is this game? What are we building? What is Steem Monsters? So you guys have a deck. So maybe I should go start by showing, here's Aggrod's collection. You'll notice I don't have a ton of cards. It's not because I don't like my own game. It's because I'm not going to print myself the best deck out there. You guys have my word. I'm here to go act ethically and not just like print an absurd amount of cards. If I want cards, I'll go buy them like everybody else. I'm not just going to give myself all the best. I did buy $150 or 180 SBD worth of legendaries, so I have a good bunch of them. A couple of these Selena Sky. I think Selena Sky is the most expensive card in the game, or the most valuable. So this is my deck. These are the cards that are in it. Like right now, you can notice that the cards level up. So sometimes the way that I describe this game is that it is a collectible trading card game. So here's all my collectible cards. It's trading. Like the trading doesn't quite work right now, but I could go give one of these cards. Why don't I go gift this? Actually, I'm gonna go give this to Clove. Clove is sweet. She's awesome. She's one of my mods. Over there, here's Clove 71. I can go send this thing as a gift. She'll go get that card, and bada bang, bada boom. So we could also, so there's an error for this. I guess I need to go refresh this because I've had this open for a little bit. But my collection, let's go back to sending her a Medusa or something. You know what? Let's just send her a Frost Giant. Why mess around? We're going to go do this the right way. She's great. So here's Clove 71, hit send. Yes, I will send one to her, and boom, I sent her a Frost Giant. So I just gave her a legendary card that's worth something like 15 SBD. That's pretty cool. So the what else have I got here? So that's how gifting works. But right now, like, we're going to go build an auction house, and I actually have a contest over in the Steem Monsters channel for people to go kind of give us concept art for one, and I'll pay with some packs or something to go inspire people to do that. But that gifting is sort of the start of being able to trade, and you'll notice that there's no cost to trading. Like, that didn't cost me anything. That was free for me to do. That was free for her to receive. That's one of the benefits of the Steem blockchain. There aren't any fees. So I just sent her that. She's a mod. She deserves that. She's pretty awesome. Okay, so that's the collectible part. That's also the trading part. In terms of the leveling part, let me see. Maybe I can do that with this one. You'll notice I have one level 3 Goblin Shaman. Let's go select all these other ones, and I'm going to combine them. And as I combine these cards, I'll go from level 1 with, I have my level 3 that had 0 out of 10 experience. Now it has 8 out of 10 experience. So my experience goes up. Now, as this thing keeps going up and up and up, these cards are going to have more stats, more powers, more abilities, and we'll talk about that down the road. So the game is collectible. The game has a trading element where I can move them back and forth. It has a RPG flavor in the sense that all these cards can level up. And then lastly, the thing that's going to happen, there's no button. I guess there's a button for tournaments, but what we're eventually going to do is we're going to have multiple types of tournaments. So let me try to write some of these down. You'll have dailies. You're going to have sort of campaign mode. We're going to have free PvP. We're going to have paid PvP, we're going to have guild PvP, and we're going to have guild boss fights. So these are just some of the things that we're going to go do. Yeah, somebody, like, this is all, everybody now has the ability to go do Steem Monsters. Actually, going back to the trading element for a second, because I'm reading chat, Jarvie just mentioned that anyone could go build a market website, and that's actually completely true. You guys own your cards, and when we switched to having a private posting key being necessary, and what we've done is basically just built a convenient interface for you to go publish custom JSONs into the Steem blockchain that then help move your cards. It's basically saying, my card doesn't live here anymore. I'm now sending it to this other person. And we have a program that can read that. Other people could have programs that can read that. We can move these things around. And that to me is pretty exciting because now you own this. And what we're really doing here is, it's different than what anybody else has created in the past. Maybe there's something to like Ethereum, the CryptoKitties or something, but we're creating digital assets that when we publish them, you own them. So like in Magic the Gathering, when they publish cards and physical cards, you own the cards because you hold it. In Hearthstone, you don't actually own your cards. Like, you have a deck that Hearthstone lets you use, but you don't own your own cards. If you get banned or something, then all your cards go away because you don't own them. You have like a lot in a like a stall or a bestiary that's housed by a centralized database. This is a decentralized database. So this thing can actually, like, as you interact with us, you're actually posting things onto the block to say this unique card is now owned by these other people, and we're using your posting key to go do that. We're sort of inventing what digital asset ownership looks like on the Steem blockchain, and that's pretty fun to me. All right, so that's some of this trading aspect, but we're going to get into these tournaments. And tournament right now is just really like how we fight. So the dailies, I want this to be a kid-friendly game. I sometimes curse on the air and things, but I really want this to be a kid-friendly game, and so we're going to have some easier fights so that even young people that don't have very expensive or leveled up decks are going to have some stuff that they can do. And those will shift every single day, and you can earn some cards over time just by playing and level up and things like that. That should be should make it so that everybody has an opportunity, even if they don't have millions of dollars, to go come into this game and build something cool and get better monsters because they're fighting. I think we're going to put in a campaign mode. A campaign mode is going to have sort of a limited amount of fighting, but the stuff is going to get progressively harder. I imagine that the dailies are going to stay pretty easy because we want brand new users to come in and do them. But the campaign is going to be harder and harder and harder and sort of tell some of the story. What I'm excited about, a lot of what we talk about tonight is still going to be about content and the story, because I think we can do something that nobody else can do, is that because our cards level, our backstory can kind of change with what level your monster is. So like that Goblin Shaman that I was just leveling, imagine he gets to level 4, I could interrupt that now, interrupt your screen and give you at the beginning it'll just be text, and you can sort of read through the story of what happened to that Goblin Shaman, at least in the game, in the story part, to make him somehow get more magically enhanced. His stats went up, his health went up. Like, how did he achieve some nirvana that made him a stronger monster, that he learned some new spell, or he was pushed to some physical limit, and that physical limit, like, just created something new that he was then able to magically summon. And so basically our stories can kind of advance with how you play the game, what monsters you advance. There's going to be some story around that. So it'll happen both in the cards, but also in the game, because we're going to have some kind of campaign mode where you as the sort of leader is going to send your group of summoners and monsters to go fight progressively harder teams and maybe some mini bosses and things like that. And it'll get you used to the different play styles. It'll tell some of the story of the realm and all of that. We're going to have free PvP tournaments. And when I say free, it's free to enter. But this is where I imagine the bulk of the reward money will go. So I keep saying there's going to be at least $1,000 tournament pool, or not $1,000, 1,000 Steem tournament. That, like, the first beta tournament that I do, I want to make sure that there's 1,000 Steem dollars that I put into that, so that I want you guys to know that there's rewards for playing this. It's not just buy cards infinitely. I hope to give quite a bit of this back to the community, so that, yeah, we develop it, but like, I also want this to be a big draw for the Steam ecosystem, and I think big prize pools will help with that. So that free PvP, we're going to have big tournaments, and I'm going to go shove a bunch of money in it to make it quite profitable. We're going to do some paid PvP tournaments. This is where you might, like, spend some Steem to go enter a tournament, and then if you win the tournament, you will win all the pot. So, like, 10 people enter, and they pay 10 Steem. There's now 100 Steem to kind of reward people, and we'll redistribute that to the winners. So that would be pretty exciting, just to have some sort of paid PvP tournaments. I want to get guilds in here. The way I envision this working, I was a wrestler growing up, and wrestling is an individual sport, but they turned it into a team sport by sort of making different weight classes, and then those different weight classes are going to fight one another. So I imagine something like we will have 11 different fights that will have kind of different matchups that you're going to have to use. So, like, your best three, you're going to... I'll explain some of this later, but we might limit it to just the death cards, or just limit it to the angelic realm, or just to the fire realm, or just to the earth realm. You won't be able to use your whole deck, but you're going to have 11 people in a team, and you're going to have to decide who of that team is going to fight who of their team, and you're going to have a lineup. And maybe it's full tournaments, maybe it's just one guild versus another. I don't quite know how all of that is going to work, but we're going to build in guild PvP. And we're also going to build in some sweet, sweet freaking boss fights, where your guild, you're going to have, that same 11 people, and now you're going to have to figure out a way not just to kill one another, but work collectively to go kill some boss monster that, has stats that no cards in the game actually have, because you're going to pit your team of monsters, and they're all going to fight the big boss, and the big boss is going to do damage to your guys. So we're gonna look for this as we go. What else have we got here? Are there questions? All right. So, yeah, there are definitely going to be more decks and more cards that come out. Just from like a product roadmap stance, I want people to know our two biggest priorities are getting an auction house up and running and getting fighting up and running. Those are the two biggest things that I think we can do. And it might just start with like the dailies, just some really easy quests that everybody can use their monsters to go kill stuff. I think that's going to be a big deal. And that's kind of on the radar here. So I want to talk story, and I want to talk stats. So Izaria, are you ready to come on air? I don't know. I'd rather talk about the story first. So let me try this. Izaria, you can come on air. Because I think talking about the story will help put a good setting to all of this. And she's not responding. She's probably not at her desk or something. So that's okay. Why don't we... I will delay a little bit. She needs to be here for part of this. Let's go look at the map. So one of the let's go talk about the map. So one of the things that I'm pretty excited about here. She'll be there in a minute or so. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Kevin. So one of the things I'm pretty excited about is some of the maps that I've seen people create. So let me go onto Aggroed account, and let me show you some of these maps, because I'm really excited. I'm really excited about like the storytelling that's going to be involved in this. So I put together a map contest, and then here are some of the map submissions. I'm going to go put these into chat. Willing to sell Zapple for 1 million packs. Sweet. Yeah, All right, so now there's one of the maps. I'm gonna keep trying to put some of these maps in there, and we can talk about these. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the stats. They're not gonna be locked. I like when we get into this, I'm sure that we are gonna be unbalanced. So we're still in alpha. I'm gonna still reserve the right to do this. Oh, that file is too powerful. Copy image, really? That's too powerful. So now I gotta go open up Paint. Paint, yep. Let's go, let's see if I can copy this into there. Do that. File, save as, I don't know, something pretty small. 1, 2, 3, put that into Summoners. There's Steem Monsters, save that. Yep, and we can copy this and paste into here. Did that work or no? Hey, why isn't it? Stop giving me shit, computer. Oh man. Alright, let me just put the post in there then. Trying to get that to go. You know, live radio. What are you going to do? So here are some of the maps. Look, I promise you that we're going to go talk about some of the stats, but I want to, the sort of setting for this is quite important to me. And I think that, damn it, these maps are huge. Let me go put these posts in. What else am I going to do? What's my next one? So, copy this, paste that. File too powerful. Man, I'm going to go punch Discord in the nuts for this. What else have I got? Got this one. I have a couple more. Because I want you all to kind of look at this stuff with me and tell me which ones you like. Get Nitro. Yeah, maybe I will get Nitro. I can certainly afford it now. File too powerful. It's okay. Put that in. And hopefully you guys are going to tell me some of the ones that you guys like the most, because I have ones that are my favorite and that my family and my friends kind of dug the most, but I'm curious what you guys think are the some of the best in here, because we're going to use this thing to go sort of set all of the story in motion that we're going to do, and this is going to be like the realms that all these people are going to fight in. Okay, so anybody want to come on and kind of talk about these maps and which ones are their favorite and why they like them and what's the best part, what's the worst part, that sort of thing? Who anybody want to come chat about these? If you want to chat, put like a 1 into if you want to talk about these things, put a 1 into chat and I'll bring you online and we can go kind of have a conversation about which one of these you think that it looks best. All right, Ty says he wants to come on, so I'm going to pull Ty in. Ty, are you there?
Hi.
Well, that's Azaria. Hi, Azaria. Ty.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what should I call you?
This Ty's fine.
All right, Ty. Tell me about these maps. Which one of these is your favorite?
I'm working on one, and it's similar to this one with the floating rock kind of deal.
Yeah, the floating rock was one of the ones that was kind of a family favorite here.
Mine is similar to that one, except I got like a city of light floating in the air above it, like on a cloud. Then I got like an underworld under it. I like that one the best, actually.
Yeah, so my wife had the comment of that one looks, my wife said that one looks like it's a much smaller world than the other ones. And she felt like the game just felt like it would be a shorter game because it looks so much littler than some of the other stuff. So that...
Am I loud? Am I very loud?
I don't know. We'll see. Doesn't seem like anybody's yelling about it.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, that's the one I like the best, but I think as a map, probably just like as a conventional map, the one at the bottom is probably the best.
So I like that art. That guy made 2 maps, and I wish that I could combine 2 of them. Yeah, this one looks like, so he made 2 of these. He made that one that's all the way down at the bottom, and the one that sort of looks like it too. Let me put it next to it. So he made this one too. I happen to dig these, but out of these 2, I feel like if this game was on like an Xbox or something, and I needed a pop-up map, I feel like the one that's a little bit more detailed and a little bit more like digital. It looks like he made it in Photoshop kind of thing. That would be a better thing for like a game where you're like pop up the map and you see where you are on the land as you're running around. But for like the flavor, I feel like the this other one is better because this feels more like what a map these people in these islands would actually draw, right? So
Yeah, like a hand drawn.
yeah, it's like a hand drawn map. So I think flavor wise, it makes more sense in the game for it to be this one. But the background in this one isn't as good as the background in the other one, where there's like a compass back there. I kind of wish there were some like there be dragons on the side, you know, the sort of like edge of the world or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's on here? We got Agrode, we got Azaria, we got Toriko. Toriko is muted. I guess she's muted herself. And then we got Ty. So this is the voice of Agrode. Ty's in there too. Toriko, did you want to talk about some of these maps?
I can, but I need to turn off something else.
Okay. So
I turned my mic down about halfway. If people could let me know in chat if that's better. Thanks.
All right, Ag. Shane said you wanted me to come on. Do you want me to come back to talk about the stories?
Well, yeah. So hopefully you're looking at some of the maps, because these maps are going to end up being sort of the foundation for these stories. So, you know.
Yeah, but I see the one that I like, the one that's detailed, that has Death Valley and all that. I think that one is really good.
Yeah, I think
I'd like to see a couple more places as well, because I think this game is going to get really huge unless you want to just start with one area of a map and then we can bring out another map later.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, that hand-printed map looks like they haven't discovered the whole world yet. So one of the things I like about it is that it makes it really easy for me to see, like, explorers traveled to the west and they found the hinterlands, or they found the tundra, or they found the great swamp. Like, it would be really easy to build in new factions or something with this map.
Shane says the maps can expand if you present it correctly. So how would you present it correctly? And Jarvie said there's an interesting opportunity here to make the map be 3 different islands in the shape of the logo. I'd personally like to see a logo contest. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think I might make the actual artist that's making all the cards make a couple different ones, but sure,
Yeah.
if you want to run a logo contest, you should certainly feel free to do that as well. No guarantee that we'll use it, but yeah, certainly just trying to get more of this stuff done. Well, yeah, but the one thing I want to go talk about some of the stats and sort of like, yeah, he can chime in if we talk about stats. So I'm glad that Yeb is here. I want to talk about kind of story and maps and setting for a little bit first, for like maybe the next 20 minutes or so, and then right around 10, I want to switch gears and start talking about stats and pull up, like, I got a freaking, I have an Excel table, and we'll literally start going through Excel spreadsheets on air, and we'll talk about, you know, stats and how levels are going to work, and how some of the basics of fighting work, and we can kind of detail that stuff out. So Toriko, tell me which map you like, or why do you like certain maps, or what are you seeing as like the best campaign style?
The first map that I ever saw was Basil Marple's map, and it really impressed me in that it wasn't just a map, it was an idea about how the world worked. I see a lot of things in the other maps that I really like. Like I like the pop-out features of the mountains and the forest in Karn's map. And I like that Omniteller, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Omnis is quite pretty too.
Yeah, yeah. So each of them has different things that I like and or don't like so much. The depth of hers, like there's an underworld and an overworld, but it's not really, it looks incomplete. Like it's not really totally thought out. And I think I like the concept idea more. Like, you know, this part of the world is where this type of creature might live. And, you know, he had something, Basil did, he had something about this is where the dragons live.
Which one is Basil?
Basil's the one, the very first one you put up.
What is that? The kind of shit.
One.
He said low res is what he called it, where it actually has some of the monsters on the map.
He didn't get that detail, but it's the one where there's a crater and then there's a little golden orb in the middle with the mountains on one side and the grass on the other.
Ah, okay. So what?
And then he has a little cloud above as well.
How did that work? You're saying that there was something about how it worked. I was looking at the art. I'm not sure that I've read all the posts.
Concept of how the world evolved. Like he had a story plot behind it already.
Okay.
Really liked. I attached to the story, and it drew me into the rest of it. There's a lot I don't like about it as well. I don't like the clumpiness of it with the mountains all on one side and the grass all on the other. I think it could use a lot of improvement, but I like the concept of it.
Azaria, are there maps in here that resonate with you more than the others?
I like the way you put them up here. I don't know who did it, so I can only describe it as the last one you put up. That I can see it has the names of the islands: Death Valley, something about a mountain. So the one, it looks hand drawn. That's my favorite one.
Yeah, I think that one that one is one of my favorites. I really like the one by Omni Taylor or Omi Taylor. That's really good too.
I don't know who that is because you just put up the.
It's buried in one of the posts. So actually, where I posted that map for the first time, right underneath that is Omi Taylor's version, and it's kind of one of those like floating worlds. And
I love that one.
The floating worlds do certainly catch my attention too. So I don't want to shit on them at all. I mean, there's a lot of good quality things in here.
I really love that one. It reminds me of the flat Earth thing that's on top of the turtle, and
Turtle
that's
Island.
the one you're talking about, right?
Well, there's two. That
I'd like to see. That. Oh, it's the one that looks like the brown on the bottom. There's a bunch of green trees. There's a volcano. I would like to see two different. I'd like to see a map that looks like that, but then the same map flat out like the first one that I liked. So just two different versions of the map. So you see it from two different perspectives.
Kind of like a flat world or space world, like a view from space, and then sort of like a view from above it, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, there's no reason why we can't incorporate more than one of these ideas into how. I mean, part of what I really want is to make sure that I have a setting. You know, I'm not just looking at, tell me the map or just show me the map. I'm looking at this as like, I need to create an entire story arc around how this game is going to play, and I want to make sure that the map is going to lend itself to that. The name of the guy that did the maps with the names of Death Valley and a couple others, I guess I'll just call it Death Valley Map for a second. That's J3 Caesar, so he's in here too.
Okay,
so that's
cool.
Pretty cool.
Can I interject about that? Like, I know y'all like that. and you have to weigh this in your mind, it's really stereotypical archetype. Misty mountains, that's just Tolkien. You know, and we might not want to something that's already overdone. You know, we might want to come up with our own names. I like the idea of the names, but maybe not something that's been done before.
Yeah, well, you definitely want to take these things as like concepts that we're going to explore further. I mean, I don't think any of these would end up being the exact final map. Some of them don't have names. Some of them don't have like full pieces. But I think it's mostly about what's the concept that we're going to start from. What can we tell stories from? Like Death Valley, there literally is a Death Valley in the United States. Like, I probably don't want to call it Death Valley. I was thinking of the name Necropolis would be the city at the center of the undead world. You know, like Metropolis, but it's death, so it's Necropolis. I think that would be cool. But we gotta go through and do that like 10 times and make all these different big cities and stuff.
I think your idea is really sound, that we have to take bits of ideas and say, okay, this is going to work. This is maybe not quite what we want, and just sort of put them all together, you know?
He asked, when do we get a dwarf? So I can show you if you're looking at the screen. So I just want, I have a lot more cards and a lot more card art. We have different priorities now. So there's one dwarf, and let me show you another dwarf. That one is the Fire Dwarf. There are dwarves, and they'll be coming, and they'll destroy your puny army. So it's going to happen. We're going to get these. We're going to get these things in here. I have like 50 more cards, and I have items. Why don't I show some items? So I'm gonna put in like various levels of rods and swords. That's actually not the one that I wanted. Let me show swords. So here's the swords. So we're gonna, like, there's gonna be items that your monsters can equip, and they're gonna get more and more badass as the game goes on, and you're really gonna be able to customize with the cards that you have, and like even as we keep going, this thing is gonna get so much more complicated, which is awesome because it's that kind of complication that'll make this game like super unique to one another. But a main part of this is that we have to be able to tell stories around all of this.
Another suggestion, I think we should have a banhammer.
A banhammer. That's right. You have chosen to act unethically. It's time for you to go. I like it. Yeah, there's lots of ways that we can do this. The trick to me is making sure that another suggestion for my map. Yeah, Caesar, I think you have a great map that's in there. What I wish I had. So one suggestion is, can you build it like a floating world, so that like right now we're looking at it from the top down. Can you show it sort of like from a side view, like we're in outer space and we're looking at your world? Because I think people really like some of those floating maps that like Omi Taylor did, and I forget the name of the other artist that did one. The other thing that I noted is that on your map in particular, I like the hand-drawn one, but I like how you have the compass wheel in the second one. I wish that the background of the second map was on the first map. That looks a little bit better to me. But I feel like I got some really good things to work with to go try to build a story around. And so I guess two things about the story. One thing about the story is we have to have kind of consistent storytelling. So we're going to have people are going to be able to submit stories as they go, and the characters are going to level. And so what I'm planning on doing is making it so that as your character levels, as your monsters level, more and more of that story is revealed. And so, but there's like I should have looked this up ahead of time. Let me go find hero mono So there's something called the hero's monomyth, which maybe this is Campbell's hero journey monomyth. But so there's the separation, initiation, and then return, and there's sections to all of these. But there's basically, you got to go leave your tribe, do something incredible, learn from that, and then come back. And that's but when you come back with that brand new experience that you can then apply to your home. So I want to make sure that the stories that we collect aren't just little snippets of that, but that we're really trying to create that full hero's cycle with the 4 levels, the 6 levels, the 8 levels, or the 10 levels that the monsters are going to get throughout the game. Is Arya.
So do you want that? Now tomorrow starts the first contest. So what's going to happen is these are the story contests, fantasy story contests for the common and rare cards. So once a week, we'll pick a random card from the common or the rare, and you'll create a story. So do you want the hero's myth within that story? So you want the whole thing?
Yeah, we really have to do that, because that's the heart of the story. The heart of this is that you have character arcs, and they do something that there's something that forces them to leave, or that they're going on some quest or some adventure. There's some kind of call to action. Within that call to action, they have some sort of experience. Maybe they're glorious, maybe it's failure, maybe they nearly die and come back. But then they conquer something, they do something epic, and then they have to go reintegrate into their society, and that's sort of like that full cycle story. So we can go build that into... I want to make sure that the hero's journey is part of every single card that's in here. So the commons and the rares are going to have kind of their own little stories. All of the goal is to make it so that all of the epics and all of the legendaries and some of the tournaments and some of the parts of the gameplay, like the storyline, all weave together into like one big monster story. And that story is hopefully going to get partially co-created by the audience as they do epic shit. So one example of this, we have, I have a contest, and that contest is the boss fight auction. So you can get drawn into the game as like a boss fight that people are going to have to kill. And when that boss fight happens, the first team that kills them, I want to go put into lore. So maybe there'll be more than one team that week that kills it. Maybe I'll have to make it extra hard or something in the first week so that it narrows who can slay that big bad monster as a team. But the first team that does, I want to make sure that they get in, and that story is built around how not only this sort of legendary epic heroic boss monster is in the game, but then we also tell the story of how it was defeated for the first time.
Now, do you want to do an idea like Jarvie was saying, each type could have a different flavor story, meaning like the death cards would have a really dark story, the life cards, should we specify that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to want the flavor text around all these, and we're going to want some commonality. It's not like every story should be cookie cutter, but we want to make sure that some of this is going to impact play style. But I pulled up Ravenloft. All right, now some of you may know what this is, some of you might not. Dungeons and Dragons is like a giant rule book that explains how combat works and how leveling works. But there's like one world that's in there that's the standard like realms, but then they build all these kind of like other realms. And so this one is Ravenloft, and this is a campaign setting. This is sort of like a vampire horror setting. And I'm not gonna steal like the setting itself, but just looking at sort of the table of contents of this, we have to figure out what is the world of Steem Monsters, who are some of the major player characters, what are the ways of the world, what are some of the different realms and the parts of there, and then what are some of the monsters that are there and the sort of horrors that exist in this game. And we have to kind of tell this whole story of like, how did the world get born? Why is the world like this? Why is there this grand tournament? What does the grand tournament do? What are the different cities? What are the different factions? What are the people from the Fireland like? What are the people from the Waterland like? If we're actually having them all be in like different regions of the world, and we kind of have to build this story up together.
Okay, so can we talk about the different elements of the card and what they represent? So, for instance, let's start with the black death cards.
Yeah, let me go pull up my Steem Monster deck. 1 second. So, in the deck, we have the red cards, the blue cards, the green cards, the white cards, the black cards, and the dragons. So I see the three of these four of them are pretty easy to describe. Fire is the fire element. Water is the water element. Green is a sort of nature element or earth element. You have white, which I think of as sort of astral and protective, and black, which is sort of having to do with death and maybe some dark magic. And then the gold set is like, what are dragons? And that story, we can create that. Does that answer that to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of, okay, so death, black, dark magic, life is white, astral, protective. What do you see? Earth is like nature. Green, fire is very fiery and active. What are you considering water, like emotions or something?
Well, so I want this to tie into gameplay. Hold on, you're cutting out a little. I want this to tie into gameplay some. So like a couple of these, I think it's sort of easy to see what that story might be. Like the red and the fire, these games typically have kind of three major classes. You have tanks, you have DPS, which stands for damage per second, groups that do a lot of damage. Tanks are groups that can take a lot of damage, and you have sort of a support class where you can heal. And what I imagine is that the red deck is going to try to pour out damage. This is going to be like a very damage-intensive group. But that means that some of their other stats are going to be a lot lower. So like they could do a lot of damage, but they die pretty easily if you hit them. So that's kind of the trade-off there. Green, because of all the growth that happens in nature, I sort of see that as a very healing group, where a lot of their powers are going to be built around constantly healing damage every round and trying to like keep their monsters alive that way. The death team, I kind of see as like, maybe I want that to be a Zerg playstyle. Zerg comes from StarCraft, where they're the ones that it's fastest to build lots of these little minions that just attack over and over and over again. So maybe the green ends up being this like the black team ends up being this like growing swarm of monsters that kind of overcomes you. Blue and magic is sort of like the hack, like it's like the counter spell. They like, to me, I think of I kind of want to make it like the hacker collective, like an aquatic hacker community where like they have cards or features that kind of like makes it stop other cards from working. I'm not entirely sure about the blue deck or how I'd want to play them yet. The dragons I sort of imagine being kind of like just your big beasts that maybe they just have some of the best stats in the game, but they're also some of the biggest cards in the game. I don't know if that's a play style. It's like few of them and make them really big. White might be like a protective thing where they have high defense and have cards that like help protect cards from actually taking damage, even if they don't do a lot of damage themselves. And And that's sort of some of my starting thoughts on how playstyles might work for those.
So you're seeing the Black Death as more a combination of tank and damage per second?
Yeah, like what I really see it doing is just they would, I don't know, maybe they're, when a monster dies, there are cards that can like force them to fight on their team, or maybe they just have the ability to summon lots of really weak cards to constantly fight on their behalf. Or maybe they're not going to be very many big cards. They're just going to be lots and lots of little cards. So, like, the way that the game actually plays is you're going to have a summoner, and the summoner is going to summon monsters. And you won't be able to summon all of the monsters. The monsters are going to have a certain mana cost, and the fight that you enter is going to have a maximum mana cost. So let's say that you have your black summoner. They have the ability to summon 10 mana worth of monsters. You could do like a dragon for 8, and then maybe a couple little commons or like smaller monsters. You could summon, 2 5 mana cost monsters. Just any way that combination leads up to 10 is how that fight would go. So you don't have like unlimited monsters you can bring into every fight. You're going to be mana limited both by the fight itself and potentially by what level your summoner is, because at level 1 they're probably not going to even be able to summon like a dragon, because the mana cost would be beyond what they could do.
Cool. So are there any other parameters that you're looking for the contest, for the writing contest?
Well, I think we need to help with the setting. I mean, so once we have a map, we can then kind of dive into the map, and we have some play styles here, right? And you have some art to help guide you. Like some of these monsters, like that pit ogre looks like a mean thing. The like goblin shaman looks like it's gonna go attack you. Like the giant rock is eating a freaking elephant. Like these things look like they're going to cause harm. Malric Inferno looks like he's ready to just shoot flames right at you. I mean, I feel like as we tell that story, like we have to go build some of that character into this, where like maybe like my daughter's a redhead with this like flaming temper. Maybe my red team stories, it's kind of like Klingon, like in just like a war culture, of like a violent culture, of like a hot-headed angry culture, and it's necessary just because that's what survival takes there.
So should we wait till we have maps and names before we do this specific contest?
Well, I think we have to for like the legendaries and the epics, but I think that you can make up some stuff for the commons. That the goblin shaman could just live in a basically empty part of the desert, and then he kind of comes out of that, and you could tell sort of like a desert story without really impacting or like trying to set what the names are and who the major characters are right there. Whereas for like the legendaries and the epics, we really have to tell a story that we all agree is part of what this world is. We have a map. We have major cities in these different areas. Those major cities have various customs, currencies, religions, cultures, standards, like how that society operates, and it's going to be different in all these different ones. So I think what we kind of need to start with is building the campaign setting for what the story is across the board. And again, for commons, it doesn't really matter because they're at the periphery, so we can kind of shove them in whatever shitty little town we want and tell whatever story we want, and it doesn't have to impact the actual story arc of the game. But by the time that we're doing epics and legendaries, I feel like we really have to know what our land is, how it works, what the power structure is, who's worshiping who. Like you kind of have to know the whole rundown kind of Game of Thrones style of like each different house and how powerful they are and why they're powerful and how they got there. And we need like that level of detail of all the cities and the history of the cities, so that we can start letting other people, we can tell them what the backstory is, and then they can come up with what the current story is.
So that information really needs to be implemented in the map itself then. So like we have some good ideas for maps, but now to finalize a map, they need to make sure that they're including, you know, each of the cards to, you know, the death, life, water, fire.
Yeah,
Earth
and I think
and gold.
almost all of the groups have done that. I mean, every single one seems to like this world doesn't seem very unified to our audience of concept artists. They really see this as different zones, and each zone will have a culture, and each zone is quite separate.
Okay, so you know what we're going to do tomorrow's contest. We're going to start with a common card then, and we'll stick with the commons for now.
Yeah, we definitely want to stick with the easy ones to begin with, because you and I have to like maybe there are some other real creative types that are willing to build this story, and that story has to be like super secretive because it's not going to happen in one go. There might be multiple seasons where we're untelling kind of the first version of the story of the realms or the Steem Monster land. I also need a good name for the Steem Monster land. I'm shorthandedly calling it Agrodia because I've used that for what my seastead would be, but I don't actually want to call it Agrodia. But that's what I have in my head to begin with. So if people have good names for what we should call this.
It looks like Jarvie and Clay have some ideas, some brainstorming session ideas.
Yeah, Clay has sent me some DMs that I haven't had a second to read. But you guys should certainly, maybe we should have like a contest for what the name of the whole realm is. But again, some of this is going to come from what the art looks like. You know, I think once we have a map that we can settle on and say, this is the map, and then we can kind of go through and be like, well, we don't like that name, so we can change that. Here's a city. We can like work with the artist to kind of like help flesh this thing out a little bit more. Because I kind of feel like there should be, that we have to have more than one city in each one of these areas. Maybe not all of them. Maybe there is just one, like the fire city. Maybe there's just one big like lava town, and everything else is just desert. And maybe there's like a desert nomadic people just trying to survive in the desert. But like if you're in the forest, and I would feel like you should have lots and lots of cities throughout the forest, or certainly in like that kind of astral realm where it seems like it's mostly populated by people, and that people seems like it has kind of a military structure. Just for, again, looking at kind of the card art, I'd want to see that. So I don't know. We gotta. I just want to make sure that we're putting in kind of at the grand level what the overall picture of the world looks like, and the legendaries are some of the main parts of the story. They're going to be the monsters in it. There's going to be like people that run the different cities and towns, so we're going to have some NPCs that we create for this. We need knockoff Ewoks. Sure, why not?
Toriko said, Toriko, say what you're going to say. You're typing.
Well, I just think that we're thinking to, you know, I've heard woods and mountains and deserts, and those things exist in our world. And what we need to do is think more like a writer and invent a world that doesn't exist yet. Think of a different type of ecosphere.
That's cool.
I'm game if you have one.
I think that's really cool.
I could think of a couple. I'd really have to work on it, but yeah, I mean, that's, as a writer, that's what you need to do. You need to create your own world that, you know, maybe it has elements of the world you're already in, but it also has elements that aren't.
And someone else said not too cartoony. I envision this as very fantasy-like. That is why I wanted to do a logo contest.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, hopefully you guys can get a sense of kind of the just how important I feel like the story is to this and how we handle this. And I feel like one of the major steps to this is going to be we get the map and then we can kind of build the campaign setting around the map. And we're still stuck with these 5 colors, and these 5 colors and these elements sort of do share some things. I think Torko's right that we shouldn't just be, running off of generic fantasy canon, but really try to like invent some of our own with like words that don't exist in the English language, and try to weave these kinds of things in. But I think the order is get the map, build some cities, put in some NPCs into those cities, a non-player character, people that are going to tell these stories that aren't the players themselves that are like conquering all this stuff. Make a language. Yeah, I'm not ready to go do that. A new chemistry. Yeah, it's probably like a magic chemistry or something, where you get stones or power stones or potions somehow. Yeah, we can build like a magic system, because that magic system could then influence what kind of like items are in the game and how you could use those items. But I feel like we have to have a lot of interplay between the map, the story, what functions there are in the game, what items there are in the game, and then how people play the game. I want to have a feedback loop back into the story, so that we are altering things based off of what's working really well, what guilds are doing good, who's killing what bosses, and how are they doing it, and kind of taking ideas from the community as they're coming.
Yeah. So with the what Torko was saying about making this, lack of a better word, very fantasy and magical things that, instead of just forests, like really making it a different universe, world, maybe a multi-universe. We need that idea to be implemented in the map itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the map has to... I think this map isn't necessarily like, that's the end-all be-all. We looked at that, we chose that, that's what we're using. I mean, I think that the map ends up being... like, this is the concept that we're going with, and as part of the story, like, I want a trading house. The trading house we're going to call Mount Mox. There was the Magic the Gathering online exchange that was called Mount Gox that ended up going bankrupt and, being all scammy. So we're going to sort of reference them because it's kind of this pop culture reference, and we're going to build Mount Mox. Well, Mount Mox, Mount is actually a mountain, so I'd actually really like there to be a mountain in the game, or maybe it's ironic and it's not a mountain, it's just a molehill or something, but there's some like central common place where everybody comes to go do their commerce, and like all these realms will like have a peace treaty that extends at least in this one area where everybody can trade, and we call it Mount Mox, and that gets built into the game. And I don't see a Mount Mox on any of these things, and that's fine because nobody really knows about it. But that's what, that's one of the concepts of like how the game is played. You have a trading house. We're going to call it Mount Mox, so let's go put that into the map. Again, I want all of this stuff to be highly consistent.
Okay, so then let's be very specific right now and talk about what, so we can finalize this map. What is everything that you want to see on the map? And then we'll go from there. So we need a Mount Mox.
Well, again, this is why I pulled up the this Ravenloft thing, because Ravenloft, like, I'm not rebuilding Ravenloft, but just having a book that talks about here are the different parts of this. We need the world, and in that world there's going to be cities, and so we have to figure out where are those cities, how many cities are there. And then once we have some cities, we're going to need like mayors and leaders and kings and like the free anarchist community. I mean, maybe the blue team are like your flaming anarchists. They're seasteading bastards that refuse to live under non-consensual control, so they fled to the ocean where they could be wherever they wanted. So we have to go, maybe there's no city for the blues, and the blue is just this sort of like sprawling, endless seascape where they all escape to. You know, I think that's kind of some of the major parts. Like, the only thing that I know that we need is a Mount Mox, and otherwise, I think how people live, you know, I imagine, like, in the fiery zone, you probably don't have tons of people all living in this one fiery zone. It's kind of, I would imagine, is sort of like a nomadic, volcanic, like, sort of how people envision Mars, this kind of dark soil, hard to live, fight for survival, hot-blooded, elemental fire. People are the only ones hardy enough to survive there. So I think the map is going to inform these things. That's my main point, is that the map comes back and shows us, you know, how do the elements live, how does this stuff all work, in a bit of a story.
Yep, absolutely. So you feel like there's enough to go on. What are we going to do now with the map? Like, I really want to finalize that. So should we run like narrow it down to the winners and then run a second map contest to get the final map?
I don't know if we're going to do that. Maybe what we do is we get first, second, and third, or we get a couple of these, and now that we know a little bit more of what we're looking for, we can go back to them and say, all right, we like these concepts, here's how we want you to expand them. So maybe we'll do a second round contest and give all the maps some feedback, and then finalize that feedback into sort of have some of this conversation of, like, we really need unique landscapes that can dictate to us some of the story for this, and all of this is going to come from your creativity and conceptual mapping of what this might look like. We need Mount Mox, because that's where this common trading will be. We need, like, we're going to have a grand tournament too, so maybe we need at least one central city where, like, the grand tournament takes place, and where the Mount Mox trading house is, where, like, all of the realms can come together into this one space. So maybe that has to be part of this map. So that sounds like something common to all elements. And that wasn't there at the beginning, or, like, well, maybe I knew that was there, but we didn't really talk about it. Or maybe these maybe the tournaments have to rotate between the cities. So I think the person that has the winning concept for the map is going to have to explain, where does trading take place in this world, and where does the fighting for these things take place.
And then would you say to leave names off of the map for now, since we're going to come up with the names later?
They can put starter, you know, like, it's probably best to have something there. You know, like, again, I wasn't the one that is stuck in my mind is Death Valley, because Death Valley is already a thing. So I wouldn't want to actually call it Death Valley, but, you know, just having some kind of name there points to, well, what is this thing like? You know, like Fire City, you immediately know it's Fire City, and it's like this populated thing. If it's called, like, the Great Flaming Wasteland, then you know that it's like a low population thing. So, like, just how you name this stuff starts bringing some kind of imagery into it, and I think it's good for the map artist to try to build some of that into their gaming concepts. So I think the next step is to sort of take the winners of the map, grab a few that seem really good, put that into one more round where we give them much more specific feedback, and then that's what gets kind of put into this map world.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, Ami, I don't. I'm willing to. So just one quick story about me. When I went to my tattoo artist, I got tattoos up along my back, and I was 18. And I went to the tattoo artist, and I said, I want a star, and I want there to be flames on that star, and I drew the flames, and my tattoo guy looked at me and he said, I'll do this, but those flames suck. And then he said, this is what it should look like. And so he did that, and he built it, and then that's what's actually on my back. So I went with one thing, and I left with another that was better than what I do. I mean, part of what I think makes me good at what I do is letting people that are better than me take the lead. So, if you end up having ideas, like you've had some of this conversation, you have some of the idea of what we're looking for, now you can sort of take that to the next level and figure out how do we make it like, what do you need to do to get the concept for the map up, hearing some of this story. And nothing's ever final. I mean, I'll keep tweaking all this shit depending on how you guys tell the story. Okay. What else do I have here? So, I want to mention at some point, this is sort of the end of my content pitch. I guess I want to dive into stats next. But I do want to say that I have a Kickstarter. I'm starting that Kickstarter. It's going to be for the starter deck, some booster packs. We're going to potentially make it so that you guys can design some legendary monsters. And then maybe some epics or rares too, so that if you guys want to create some stuff and put it in here, as I build this, the map, maybe we'll have some city leaders and NPCs that we could name after you. So we're gonna build stuff into this, and it'll be a combination of using Steam itself as sort of like an auction platform, or maybe Kickstarter to help drag people in that are normies and bring them into the Steam ecosystem. We're gonna make that happen too. So I just want to. I'm not going to talk about this because this is so bare bones. It's kind of embarrassing to even show. But I want you to know that that's kind of like on the horizon somewhere. So,
Toriko said that the story should happen. The story should dictate the map.
Yeah, I went the opposite way. I'm going to let the map dictate the story. One of the things that I've grown up believing is that like the land helps dictate who you are. So people from New England act a certain way, people from California act a different way, people from different regions act different ways, and I think a lot of that has to do with some of the natural landscape. Like if you grow up in a cold, icy place, you have to have a certain amount of like stamina in the world and toughness, just because of growing up in the cold and having a land that can kill you. Like growing in really warm, temperate, easy areas sometimes creates these kind of like really relaxed, it's too hot, let's not go too fast, let's just kind of take our pace and take our time. The sky is beautiful, plenty of food, plenty of fish, nothing to worry about. Like the landscape creates who the people are. He doesn't.
It's a couple.
Yeah, he wants to talk stats.
There's just a couple interesting comments in here. The contest idea is one person coming up with a random idea. And Amber had a crazy idea about a wailing wall, and someone else said you go to the wall to get advice, but you lose part of your life every time you do it. Man, I see this as like a video game happening.
Okay. So, Yaba has to go somewhat soon, so I want to go talk some stats. So I've put I've started by putting some rules up here. So this is a starting point. It's not the final point, but I want to talk some generics about how this stuff works, and then switch to actuals and kind of get some community feedback. Yaba, if you're here and you want to go chime into this thing, I would love that. I'm going to bring some of the folks that are already here. I want to kick out everybody that's not Yaba. So excuse me, Azaria, Tor, and Ty. It's me and Yaba for now, and we'll pull people on from the audience that might be interested later. Okay, they're asking me for a screen zoom. Let me do that. Where's the zoom for this thing? View, zoom, 150, maybe even more. All right, so here, tournament rules. So I'm thinking this is the free tournaments that we're talking about. I'm not talking about all the other stuff yet. There's going to be 10 free tournaments a day. The winner of the tournament is the individual or team of monsters that are the last one left with any health. Each tournament will be assigned a maximum mana count. Players will choose a single summoner to summon monsters to fight for them in each fight of the day. Players will choose monsters worth up to the maximum amount of mana in each tournament, and they'll be limited by how much mana the summoner has, because they'll have a mana pool, and every time that they summon a monster, it'll drain some from that pool, so that you can't necessarily fight in every single piece. All right, the computer will generate tournament brackets. The teams are going to fight. The winning teams of the first bracket will move on to the second bracket, and you keep doing that until there's a winner is determined. The prizes will be distributed to the highest ranked winners. 1 and 2 are easy, 3 and 4 that next round, and then maybe even 5, 6, and 7. So we could have kind of tiers and not necessarily try to separate third and fourth there. Experience. The monsters are going to experience 1 experience point for every round that they're in. So when you enter a monster and a summoner, they'll get 1 experience point. If they beat their opponent and they move on to the next one, they'll get another experience point. If they beat their opponent and they move on to the next round, they'll get another one. So everybody will get 1 experience point per tournament. Half the people will get 2 experience points. A quarter of the people will get 3 experience points, and then it keeps going down less and less, so that, you know, the winner might get 5 to 10. Most people are going to get 1, and there we go. So you can earn more experience by combining the cards, and then when you do that, as you level up, you're going to get more of the key stats, and you're also going to get special card abilities. So the 5 core stats, and these are monster stats. These are not the summoner stats, but the monster stats are going to be attack, defense, speed, health, and magic attack. So the attack is how much damage they're going to do. Defense is how much of that damage they can absorb. Speed is going to determine who goes first and also determines the likelihood of hitting an opponent. Health, this is how much damage your monster can take before it dies. And then magic attack is going to be like an automatically applied damage. Like for the D&D crowd, it's basically like a magic missile. It automatically hits and it automatically hurts your opponent. Okay, so now the cards, as they start or as they level up, are going to gain special abilities. So special abilities could be First Strike. They're the first monster to attack. You'll have Flying, which will have a higher chance of evading attacks versus non-flying monsters. You have Trample, so they'll kill an opponent and then they'll damage the one behind them. You'll have Regeneration, which might heal a portion of combat each round. You could have Void, which makes them immune to magic attacks. You could have Poison, which does damage over time, and I see that as slowly increasing with each time that you get poisoned. Stun could make it so that your opponent can't attack. Slow could go slow their speed. Rejuvenation. If like if you die in the first round and you go to the second round, all of your monsters will come back and they can all fight. But if they died in the first round, they're going to have a health debuff placed on them, which would be 75% of their health. If they have the skill Rejuvenation, then they would come back at 100%. We got Blast in here. Blast damages all of the other opponents, kind of like an AoE or area of effect attack. And then as they level, they keep going up. So this is going to be simulated combat. So this is sort of how, switch the abilities tab because it has more. Yep, so he added a couple more. Here's Inspire. All friendly monsters get an attack bonus. Protect. All friendly monsters get a defense bonus. Fear, minus 10% stats to all opponents. Retaliate. When hit, has a chance to return damage back to the attacker. Enrage has increased attack when not at full health. Sneak has the ability to attack the last monster instead of the first. The first monster is basically your tank, and that's what you're going to be fighting versus somebody else. If the tank dies, then you go on to the next monster, and that's how combat will go unless you have Sneak, and Sneak is going to make it so that instead of attacking the tank, you attack the back line. So kind of neat. Yeah, so of course this stuff is going to help inform these stories, and the stories are going to help inform these. It's going to be highly iterative. So here, hopefully now you have a sense of how this combat works. And combat is going to work in such a way that it's simulated. So all that you have to do is pick a summoner and pick a monster, and the computer will do the rest. It'll roll a chance to hit. If it hits, it'll determine how much damage. If you have any of these effects, it will apply them. Check to see if the monster's dead or not. If it's alive, then the other monster is going to attack and see if it hits, and then see how much damage it does. And if it has any effects, it'll apply them. And then look, okay, is that one dead? No. And then it keeps going back and forth until you start killing monsters. And as you kill monsters, you're then going to go on to the second monster, maybe the third monster in the army. And then when they're all dead, then you get to move on to the next round. So, well, this is part of why we're talking about these things. You know, this whole thing is iterative. There's not, we want the story to impact the cards. We want the cards to impact the story. So we can't just make all of one and then make all of the other. Like, these things are going to keep going back and forth. Okay, so now the much awaited, we have the monster list. And the monster list has the name of the monster, the color of the monster, the rarity, which also has a rarity index. There are some drop rates that are in here, whether or not it's in the starter pack. And just so everybody here knows, we are going to decrease the number of monsters in the starter pack. I'm going to announce that pretty soon. And then we're going to get into some of the key stats. So you're going to have a mana cost, and right now we're only looking at the commons. We haven't started getting into the rares, the epics, or the legendaries, but we're starting with the commons to try to figure out, okay, here's your mana cost. So based off of how much mana that we put in there, what's their total stats? And these total stats are an accumulation of their attack, defense, speed, health, and magic abilities, and then in addition to that, as these cards level, they're going to get skills. So like this Haunted Spider is going to start with Poison. It's then going to, at level 6, get Slow. And finally, it'll get Enraged. So that you're going to have to go fight poisonous monsters that will slow you and then enrage. And but these abilities also are going to, we add that up to sort of the total stats count. So some of the stats are coming from its attack, some are coming from its defense, some are coming from its speed, some are coming from its health, some from its magic, and then others of those points are coming from what their abilities are. And some of these abilities are better than others, and I don't know if we're discounting the abilities if it's coming in late or something. Like if it's not there till level 10. Yeah, but does it work that way? If Fear doesn't come in till level 10, does that change how many points we're counting towards their abilities?
No, I haven't put that in yet. My overall thinking in the stats, and for everyone that is looking at this is going to change a lot. So, my overall goal here is we want to make it a balanced game. We, as much as possible, want to make it like a rocks, paper, scissors, so that just because you have the legendary dragon doesn't mean you just crush everybody else. It's really important how you make your deck, I guess you could call it. It's extremely important. We really want to have a good meta, so like understanding what people are playing, having good responses to that, and everything. So before we really have any type of final stats, my goal is to get at least the basic fighting system in, so we can run simulations. So the idea is that if white cards are supposed to have an advantage over black cards, and blue is supposed to have an advantage over red, with cards like a blue card with the same mana cost as a red card, we can run simulations and make sure that it actually wins the percentage of time that we want. If we find out a 2 mana blue card loses every single time to a 2 mana red card, that means it's not balanced. We're going to have to adjust these things. And so all these numbers in here are just kind of some guesses at this point as to how powerful different abilities are and how powerful the different stats are. But I think we'll really figure that out for sure once we have a simulator running with our actual intended combat mechanism. And then the goal is to just go through all that and make sure it really is a rocks, paper, scissors mechanism, and there's nothing that just will kind of win every time, because then everyone will start playing that and it won't be fun. Then of course the real fun thing is once we release that, seeing what the community comes up with that we didn't think of, which then might lead to some changes later on, which happens in most games. But that's what I'm excited about, seeing what you guys come up with for decks that we're like, wow, we never thought of that card combination that totally wrecks everything. If we gotta rethink things, but do it best we can to make it balanced.
Part of what I was thinking here is that what we need is to kind of come up with ranges, and the range would be we're sort of close to this now. 1 mana cost for a common. Let's give it a pretty easy number. We'll say a 1 mana cost for a common will give you total stats of 50. And if you have 2 mana cost, that'll give you 100 total stats. 3 will give you about 150. 4 will give you 200. It won't be exact. We'll have some that, are up or down, plus or minus 20%. So not all commons will be exactly alike. But then what we do is we say, okay, the rares, when we're looking at their mana cost, instead of having a mana cost of 50, or their mana cost will lead to stats of 50, the rares are going to have stats of 75. And the epics might have 100, and the legendaries might have 150. And that's per mana. So like, you could have a legendary that only costs 1 mana. You could have a legendary that costs 8 mana. That legendary with 8 mana should have stats worth 8 times the level 1. And those should be higher than what the commons are. How does that resonate to you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be that simple as far as what the actual numbers are. That's why, and again, all these total stat numbers are just guesses right now. So I think that's right, and we'll get actual stat values from doing fighting simulations.
Yeah, but I think we can balance it pretty well if what we're doing is we're starting with you get mana cost times how many points you get for that rarity. So commons give you fewer stats, rares give you more stats, epics give you more, and then the legendaries have the most. And maybe it's not 50, 100, 150, and 250, or like 200 per level. Those numbers might change. I don't know how close we want to keep them or how far we want to spread them. But if we keep that kind of arrangement, then even if the game is kind of broken, it's kind of broken equally across all decks.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem with the total stats number is, they're just guesses. So until we have the actual fighting, like, we don't know which stats are really going to be more important than which others. I mean, just looking at some of these things, if you kind of think through the fighting mechanism, and how the stats work, you can see where just, in my opinion, some things will just be totally mismatched.
What do you see that as? I want to know what you think the most important stat in the game is, and then I'll tell you what I think is the most important stat in the game.
Well, it's hard to say what the most important stat is. Also, I would say we haven't finalized how exactly the fighting will work yet. So I think it all comes to, I think once we, and this is something I want to work on very shortly, is like getting the basic fighting mechanism in, so we can start saying what happens if a haunted spider fights a spine-back turtle. I think once we do that, it'll like just be very clear, what's good and what's bad and what needs to be changed.
I can tell you what I think the first one will be. I think the most important stat is going to be speed. And we'll see if I'm right or wrong here, but I ultimately think speed does two things. It determines who goes first in a fight, so the faster monster starts attacking first. And then the second thing it determines is the chance to hit. So that if you have a high speed character, then you're going to have the likelihood of hitting the other monster quite a bit for physical damage. The counter to that, of course, is that your magic attack always hits. So if you're upping your speed, you might have to decrease your health. And if you're fighting a monster that hits you every time because it's automatic damage, then maybe you're going to die faster. But I think under a lot of matchups, one of the most important stats is going to be how speedy you are, because it's going to keep you from getting hit in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And it's with something that powerful, you have to be extra careful. I want to avoid a situation where everyone doesn't play any slow cards because they just get wrecked. I want every single card to have its place somewhere. I don't want any card to be like, this one just sucks and no one uses it. Ideally, I want every card to have like something that it does. And you need to make sure that if speed is so important, that you can still have slow cards that are good. Like, for example, the Pirate Captain is a good example of how I have it here. He's slow, but he packs a big punch. So if he just never goes first, except if he gets first strike at level 8, but before that, if he like literally never goes first, and even if he lives after the first round, he never hits, he's just going to be a useless card. So I want to make sure. That's why I'm like hesitant to spend too much time putting in stats until I really see how exactly the fighting works, and we can base it around that. So
the first part. So you have let's just say that you only have 1 mana, and actually the lowest one in here is 2. So why don't we start with, you only have 2 mana. So we're gonna have the animated corpse fight the Crustacean King. We're going to forget about some of the bonuses that the summoners can apply to these monsters, because the summoners are going to help them. And these two, black and blue, I don't think have any kind of complementary or disastrous combination. Maybe they do, but the blue team will have buffs against red combatants. And I don't think that there's one between black and blue, so I'm just going to keep going. But the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to take the animated corpse has a speed of 20, and the Crustacean King has a speed of 20. And because of that, they're going to have an equal chance of hitting one another. So it's going to have because they're the same, it'll have a 50-50 chance of hitting. So the first thing that'll happen is it'll hit. Now the Crustacean King, let's say we flip the coin and it hits. The Crustacean King is going to do damage against the animated corpse. The amount of damage that it does is 20 minus the defense, which is 20, and you always score a minimum hit of 1. So in that first round, it's going to do 1 damage. And then that...
Yes, if I could jump in. So thinking about it, I've also thought about this. I'm not sure I like that the defense is just subtracted from the attack. I think I like more the idea that we had where the defense is a roll between 1 and 20. because otherwise it's just, it's going to be a long and drawn out battle. Also, they're each going to just do 1 damage to each other every time. It's just going to take forever.
Yeah, I think it's okay to build in attacks as a range and defense as a range too. So like in D&D, your weapon doesn't do 6 damage every time. It does 1d6. So maybe our attack is a number that's like 1d6 attack, and the defense might be 1d6 defense with a minimum damage of 1.
Yeah, so I just think a lot of these things are going to be changed. Like, we just might change it in this conversation. So, I want to get to a point where we can actually try it out and do it, and then we'll just kind of iterate until we get something that works.
So you want it. You don't want it to be static defense. You want it to be a ranged defense, and you want a static attack, or do you want a ranged attack?
I was thinking static attack with ranged defense. I don't know. There's also some point where there's just too much randomness thrown in. I also was thinking it'd be cool to, even though the fights are simulated, to be able to actually watch it get played out. So, something where you just see it and, it says, literally shows on the screen the Crustacean King and the animated corpse, and, says, animate Crustacean King hits for 20 or whatever, and, shows whatever's happening, and, every second or something, so you can watch it play out, even though it all can be done instantly.
Yeah, sure.
So in that case, you don't want 1 damage here and 1 damage there. The fight takes an hour.
No, I agree. I think that's right, because it, in the heart, it's just Crustacean King hits X damage, so you could see like the claw move forward into the animated corpse, and you could see a certain, like, a number pops up, and you could be like, oh, he just did 10 damage.
Yeah, I mean, we might not get into specific animations of the claw going in, at least at first, but at least see the cards and see what's going on. And yeah, so my whole thing is, like, I think the most important thing is going to be a really good and balanced system here. So personally, I don't think we're committed to anything at this point. This is, where our thinking is. But I would say, like, I'm totally up for redoing all of this if it needs to be done to lead to, like, a really strong fighting mechanism that, like, really has as much skill involved as possible.
Yeah, I mean, so part of what got me frustrated about Hearthstone is that I felt like it was too much luck. That what order your cards came in, and what order who went first, or when they got that one card they needed determined who won the game, and that got me really frustrated. And
they added a lot more RNG stuff, and that that annoyed a lot of people. And this game as designed at the moment, already has a lot of RNG, and it kind of needs to, because it's not going to be like real time where you're making decisions. So I don't know. Yeah, it's something we got to think through. So, while this is what we're thinking right now, it might totally change, because I agree, we want it to be as skill-based as it can possibly be.
So, my brain right now is really stuck on, get your commons, and they're going to have, just set a number to 50. Commons are going to have 50 skill points per mana. And then maybe your rares are going to have 60, your epics will have 75, and then maybe your legendary has 100. As, like, at level 1, that's what they get. How does that sound to you?
Well, the concept is good, but we don't know what a skill point necessarily means. And I want to make sure that the legendaries, someone who just, like, buys everything also doesn't, just win. I want to, if someone has a well-designed deck of commons and rares, I want them to be able to beat a not well-designed deck of legendaries.
So
we just say that legendaries automatically have double the stats of commons. That just might not be possible.
Yep. So maybe that's too high. So do you want to do something like 50, 55, 60, and then maybe 70?
Well, I just don't want to set the numbers right now until we can see.
Well, I would set the numbers and then tweak how much each different point is worth, right? Because we have to have something that is standard, that doesn't change, that we sort of both agree on, so that like we can tweak things later, but there has to be some kind of normalized value. And the easiest one to do this with, I think, would be you pick a mana cost, you multiply it by its factor, like the point factor for commons or rares or epics, and then we figure out next up, all right, we know how many points they get. What are we counting as a point could then come after that.
Yeah, so that's already what I was doing. The only difference is I had like kind of a base of around 100, and I started at 2 mana. I don't know why, just because I thought like maybe we'd throw in some like weird 1 mana objects later. So like all the monsters we have now would start at a minimum of 2 mana. But so I kind of had it like it starts at a base of about 100. And like, so the 2 mana cost guys would be like the 100 to 120 range, and 3 mana cost guys would be like the 130 to 140 range, and 4 would be like 150 to 1. They're looking
so you're the only difference between us right now is that, well, your numbers have more of a range than what I'm setting. Let's set a very static range, although maybe I'm not quite that specific. But you set your number to basically 40. And I'm saying let's just do an even 50 for the commons. But again, leaving in room that some commons are going to be slightly better than others. They don't all have to be exactly, I wouldn't say every single level mana cost for common would have exactly 200.
Right. Well, so this is kind of what I had thrown in there. And if I also did like just took a random crack at the gold dragon cards, if you scroll down to the bottom, and I tried to think about not purposely not making them overpowered, so they're strong and they're good cards, but it's not like crazy.
I think those look a little weak to me. If your number is starting at 40, because your base is somewhere around 40, 8 times 40 is 320. I don't think you're giving an 8 mana cost enough love.
Where are you getting the 40 number?
Because look at the reds. So the total stats value and the mana cost. Your Goblin Shaman is 3. Your total stats is 120. Your Giant Rock is 4. Your total stats is 165. Your Fire Beetle is 3. That's up to 140. And the only one that's sort of off to me would be that Kobold Miner. Should be closer to 80 than it would be 115, or that Kobold Miner might be a 3 cost. But in your settings, you kind of have it set so that a mana cost of 1 is equal to 40 stat points is kind of how you develop this. But it doesn't work like that when we get to the dragons, because you have a level 8 and it's only giving 250. So that's actually, I think that looks underpowered to me.
Well, I don't know how you define underpowered. If we make it so that the dragons just destroy everything, so if you have a dragon in your deck and someone doesn't, then you just win, then the game is bad.
No, but
so
look at,
I don't.
Here's what I'm doing. I'm taking this number is equal to, this is equal to this divided by this. So there, your total stats per mana is 41. Let's go look at a dragon.
I know, but I'm saying that your method doesn't exactly work. It leads to just cards being too overpowered.
Well, not if we so that my original statement where the legendary was twice as powerful as a common, I think that's correct. But if we tweak this so that your common is 40 your rare is 45, your epic is 50, and your legendary, maybe they're just 55 or 60, then it's not as dramatic as being twice as powerful. They are slightly more powerful, but not infinitely. But
what all I'm saying is you can do this, but then if you go through the actual fighting and the actual math, I think you'll find that the dragon will just defeat an entire deck of other cards.
Hopefully not.
Well, I've started to do this, and that's what I found. So I don't want to be like wedded to, okay, legendaries have to have at this mana cost have exactly this many stats. I'm just more concerned about making a balanced game. And Hearthstone does it really well, and I'm using that as an example, where the legendaries are cool and they're big and they have a lot of neat stats and they look cool, but they don't make the game unbalanced. Like they're still, they're not overpowered in any way.
Yeah, they're certainly not twice as powerful as other stuff, although some of them are.
Right, and I mean, sometimes that's not on purpose and things have to get nerfed. But I'm less concerned about like keeping to some exact stats number and more concerned about just making sure things are balanced, because otherwise it's just not going to be a good game.
Yeah. So
I had kind of like a sort of idea here for it, which I put in, and I want to take that and run some actual battle simulations and then tweak it. Is kind of the plan that I have.
In your brain, how much better is a legendary than a common? Is it 1% better? Is it 15%?
I don't look at it like that.
Well,
I look at it like they're cooler. You don't want to. I want to avoid being a pay-to-win game as much as possible.
Well, no, I agree with that. The way that you can avoid pay-to-win is level caps. So, like, look, you could pay as much money as you want, but your dragon's not getting a higher level than what it's at. And
yeah, but still, even just having the dragon is, a pay-to-win type of thing. Like, I want someone who's like really good that only has common and rare cards to be able to beat the dragons.
Well, yeah, I mean, presumably if you're putting in a dumb summoner, or like you should be able to have it so that two rares that are getting a buff from their summoner versus a dragon that might not be getting a buff from its summoner, that dragon's going to lose because somebody else made a smarter team.
Right, so you have to be careful that the stats allow that. And I think if you kind of do what you were saying, then it like literally would not matter what summoner, what stats or they have, the dragon would just win. So I want to make it where they're a little better, and they're definitely cooler, but like exactly what you said, we want to make sure that happens. So a smart deck with commons or rares will beat a not smart deck with dragons.
So
that's the most difficult part.
So that just comes back to me of like, the legendaries are cooler. How much cooler? I mean, maybe it's not that big of a difference. Maybe that you have, 50 starting points and then your legendary gets 60. So that's like a 10 or 15% bonus over your...
Yeah, maybe that level.
Okay. Well, that can...
But
I mean,
again,
that works for me.
We'll try it.
Well, I think your point of these cards are better, but they're not exceptionally better. I started by saying they're twice, and I think that we came to consensus that that's too high. So, I think if we build a point system where maybe they're 15% better, let's go ask the audience here. So I'm gonna put a couple numbers into chat, and I want you to put emojis under them. Please only use one emoji, and just give me a feel for how big of a delta you think there ought to be. So I'm gonna put in a couple numbers here. So can you guys put an emoji? What I'm really wondering is how much better should a legendary be than a common? So put an emoji, put a number. Where do you think it should fall? Should a legendary be 50% better? Clay, you're saying that a legendary should be 100% better than a common?
The key thing, though, that I want to say is I feel like the actual fighting will answer this question for us. So,
well, there's lots of ways to tweak this, but I think that it all starts by having one thing that's normalized. Yeah, he wants 100 times more powerful. Well, Jarvie, we don't want to make it 100 times more powerful, because then that does seem like, well, you have to have only the legendaries. You might as well not have the commons in your deck, right? Because you're only going to play those legendaries.
it's not 100 times more powerful. It would be 100% more powerful. So
Wait.
2 times as powerful. 100 times would be ridiculous.
Well, right. That's what I was arguing. So in the little thing that I put here, I put, is it 100% better or is it something smaller?
Well, I'm saying that the percent, not times.
Yeah. Well, they put in the
things.
times, and I'm like, that's just totally ridiculous. So, I think we can easily get rid of 10% isn't enough, and it's somewhere between 20 and 100%. So, I mean, that is a range, but it's not an impossible range to work from.
Clay, I think it should be possible if Bernie were to put a really stupid deck together of legendaries for someone who's really smart, and is able to put a really good counter deck together that they only spent $5 on, that they should be able to win. That's exactly what I'm going for. You have to be very smart to do that, but I want that to be possible.
So, this stuff's a little contentious. Is Nathan in the audience? Do I have a show on after this? I don't think so.
But actually, it's getting late over here, so I got to head out.
Okay. But I feel like this was a productive discussion. You're okay with this, Yaba? You feel like this has some good elements to what we're talking about, and we're narrowing in on a range that we both agree on?
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think it's going to change a lot before things are live. But it's the right discussion to have. And Clay, I mean, that's not how it works in Magic or Hearthstone or anything. You got the really good players. They do things where they just play with an all common or all free card decks, and they make it to legendary, and that's what makes the game really good. That's what makes people want to watch the great players stream and learn how to do it. And if it's just the whales can win, then it's just a pay to win game, and then it's just really not fun.
Yeah, I think to me, I'm not comfortable even after I proposed it as I was saying that the commons would start with 50 points per mana, and the legendaries might have 100 points per mana, but I think I agree with you that is too skewed, and that is too close to pay to win. So,
and when I say the legendaries are cool, I literally mean not as far as fighting is concerned. They look cool. They have lots of abilities. They have big mana cost. Just so they're big beefy creatures, but then it's still not balanced. So they have these really big stats, but it's balanced by them also having a high mana cost. So they're just cool for a lot of other reasons outside of the actual fighting.
Yeah, but I do think that I want the legendaries to have better abilities than a common. That shouldn't be that contentious.
Yeah, I mean they should be slightly better, but only they should be better enough that, or better only a little bit enough that a good player, a smart player, without the legendaries can beat them. That's the key thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty okay with that. So I think we got to find a range where the skill points per mana seem reasonable, and then we test, is one attack as valuable as this random defense number that we're giving it, and is that as valuable as some amount of speed? So like once we normalize how many points they're getting, then the question is, are these things actually equivalent, and making sure that they are, so that when we say it gets 100 points, that when we tweak the stats for something else with 100 points, maybe it's 50-50, one wins versus the other or something.
Yeah, so when I run the simulations of actual fighting between different cards, that'll see right now I'm just adding up all the attack, defense, speed, health, magic. I give more weight to magic, and I just kind of assign what I thought would be the relative values of the different abilities. But if you actually run the simulations, then you can see, like flying cards beat non-flying cards with this, amount. And, similarly, like speed might be the best stat. So that will let you weight things correctly. So your total stats won't just be adding them all up. It'll be, speed might be worth 1.5 times what defense is worth.
Yep.
And then once we have that, then we can use exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying we can't use it now because we really don't know what these things really mean in actual combat. So if you say 50 points, we don't know like how many of those is 10 speed worth the same as 10 defense or not. So, I think probably not.
So what I would say is the normalization happens with the points per mana, and that stays set. We figure that out, and then we set it. And then what we're going to start tweaking is how many points are attack, defense, speed, health, magic, and the various abilities worth, so that it does feel equal. But the way that I would normalize this so that all the cards of a given type end up feeling like they have the same power and that they are really like balanced in their own class would be to start by saying this is how many points they get, and then doing our best to make sure that all those points are equivalent.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that. I also want to focus on just getting like a basic fighting mechanism down, as quickly as possible.
Okay, that sounds good. So my first thought, are we going to start by fighting just some like the dailies, some really easy like computer generated content? Are we going to start with a campaign mode? Are we going to start like right through by PvP and tournament brackets? What do you
No, definitely. So I was first just talking about like a simulator that I can run, and so we can get some stats figured out. As far as actual like players fighting, it would be definitely not starting with PvP. So we'll start with some PvE type stuff.
And for the dailies, I'm hoping that like an 8-year-old kid can play this, so they like hop on.
Sure.
And at least the monsters in the daily are like, I guess usually only common cards, and that the reward for doing your dailies is either packs or points that lead to packs, assuming that you're winning those like easy daily fights. Is that what you see?
I was thinking we could do cool things, like it's not just do you win or do you lose, but also like how much mana you use to win. So it's like, an 8-year-old can come on and they could put a bunch of things and they could win. But then there's also maybe some achievements, like if you can do it, you can beat it using only 4 mana, then you get something additional. And that I hope will open it up, to people writing guides and tips and like streaming, how to do these things.
So the card that I had in mind for that would be to build in said not. So rather than Ned Scott, put in said not, and he would have like 0 stats and 0 abilities, but he would help you get more points towards cards when you win. So I was already thinking on that same level, but I was going to go do it by trolling Ned just a little bit.
I'm up for a Ned related card in there.
But don't you like that? Like he doesn't have any stats, but his ability is, because he doesn't have those stats, if you win, then it's sort of like some extra ponage, and so we'll give you more points towards a deck. So like, would you give a pack per day for dailies? Would you give a pack per week? What would be the frequency? If I won all of my dailies, how many dailies would I have to do to go get a pack?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think a pack per day is probably fine. We might not want to get too much more than that.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to do more than one pack per day. And I think what I would do is do something like, all right, let's go give you like 5 fights. And if you win all 5 fights, then okay, you can get your pack. If you win 3 of them, then you'll get points that will accumulate until you get 50 points, and then you can get a pack that costs you 50.
I mean, or just it's an opportunity to get your cards more experience too.
That too. Yeah, absolutely. Is that it'll count towards, all right, here's an easy fight. It's only built with commons and low-level summoners that you have to fight. You're not fighting legendaries in those, and you're not fighting mean opponents. This is a cheap way to get experience, and but I do think it's important that they can go get packs. So maybe...
Yeah, but there's not too many.
Yeah, I would cap it at 1 per day. And that, because I want that 8-year-old who has no income to be able to get their dad to pay $5 or, to start playing this game, and then over the course of the year, get the cards that they need without having to the kid doesn't have a salary, so how are they supposed to play? I just don't want to.
Well, they're supposed to post on Steam and earn
crypto. Hey kid, that feels like a shakedown. I'm not gonna do that to the kid.
No, I don't know. It was a joke, but
yeah, look,
yeah.
that
right,
kid.
I really got to go though.
All right. Well, yeah, but I feel like we had a good conversation here, and I'm looking forward to working with you to make sure that all of the stats actually have equal points that they contribute to their total stats. And when we get that, we should have a balanced game.
And I'm sure, like I said, people are going to come up with crazy stuff we haven't thought of. We'll have to hit some things with the Nerf bat. That's life.
Yeah. All right.
Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, but thanks for being here. Thanks for building with this with me. You were awesome and a genius, and this is fun. I'm having fun. Thank you.
I don't know about the genius thing, but I'm doing what I can.
I'm positive. You're awesome. All right, bud.
Thanks.
Well, that was Yabamat, and he's a witness. He's not a top 20 witness, so you guys have to fix that. You have to fix that by voting for him. To me, I think Steem Monsters is going to go huge. In fact, it's already gone way past my own starting expectations. I think this game is going to blow up like crazy, and when that happens, we need people like Yaba to be able to devote a lot of time to this, and I really hope that you vote for his witness and try to encourage whales on this platform to vote for his witness, because we got to get him up to the level of a top 20, because I want him to quit his job and do this full time with me. Because to me, as much as I love this game and as much as I'm excited for this game, this is a part of my overall mission to go spread the values of peace, abundance, and liberty. And people that listened to the Peace Academy last night know that we're going to bake some of those messages of peace, abundance, and liberty into the stories that are told in this game. I want it to help grow the Steam ecosystem. And I think, a year from now, Steem Monsters could actually be the #1 app on the platform and the #1 thing that people are using to go interface with this, and one of the biggest draws for people on the platform. So if we do this right, we can really help grow the Steam ecosystem. And then lastly, train and retain people on the platform. So hopefully when they find a community and they start playing the game and they're doing their dailies, they don't just do the one 5-minute thing with Steem Monsters, but they keep coming back for more. So I don't know. So let me do a poll. So after having heard this discussion, are you less excited about Steem Monsters or more excited? If you're less excited, put in a 1. If you're super excited, put in a 5. And let's go see some 1s through 5s. did you like hearing the founders talk about this? Does it increase your excitement? I hope to see a lot of 5s. I hope I don't see any 1s, but just give us feedback. Was this a good stimulating conversation and you're excited? You want more cards and you want more of this game? You're like, or is this, do you feel like we're on the wrong track and it's stupid? I'm seeing a lot of 5s, so that's good. I'm hoping that you guys, I want you to think that Yaba and I are having the kinds of conversations that we need to have that are going to give you the best freaking game experience possible. So for the people that are dropping 5s into chat, thank you. We're doing our best to make this a good game for you. So I see a couple 3s. Do you guys want to give some feedback on like what made it a 3? What didn't you hear that you wanted to hear? And for the 5s, can you say some of the things that you're the most excited about hearing? What made you give it a 5? So put some of that stuff in the chat. Excited about the stories, worried about the economic aspect of the game. Yep, that's fine. This needs to have more conversation about theory and plot. Yep, Azari and I are going to keep meeting and discussing that. I think you're totally right. Well, too much about the stats. A lot of people want to know about the fighting. So I don't know. Most of what we talked about was like the theory and the plot and the map and building the content. It was really only this last 40 minutes that was about that. Yeah, Clay, let's go get you on. Let's go have a conversation. Just hop in a chat with me. Clay, my dear. Is there anybody else that's like dying to talk about this thing with me? I'm here for maybe 15 to 30 minutes more. I'm totally wiped from this weekend. I had to be a best man at a wedding. There's a product suggestion box. I guess I could go create a content suggestion box. Yeah, well, come on air or something. All right, Clay, you're here. What's up? And Jarvie, you can come on too. Actually, why don't you guys? You can't do a 1. Type in airtime, the word airtime, if you want to hop on the show and kind of give us some feedback here. Clay, you're up. Go for it.
Okay, so the only I guess kind of concern that I got from that, and I mean I think you can attest that I'm pretty much into this, about as in as I could be. I think I'm kind of. Yeah, actually, I think I might have more put in than Bernie right now. But whenever, I totally get that things have to be balanced, right? I get that, and I get that we don't want a pay-to-win situation here. But a legendary and leveling up cards needs to feel like it has a point, right? Like a level 10 common versus a level 1 legendary, that's something I can see kind of being a more fair fight. But I don't think somebody should be able to build a $5 to $10 cheese deck that just goes through and writes the most powerful decks in the game. Because if that happens, then you're gonna have basically people that are putting money into it have no incentive to buy those legendaries. I mean, the pretty card art and everything, that's all fine, but I mean, you're buying top end cards because you want power, right? You want to be able to build something that you can get an expected return out of.
So let's say you have a cheese deck and you have a legendary deck. Are you going to win every single time with a legendary deck? So you have, forget about summoners for a second. You have a mana cost 8 dragon and a mana cost 8 T-Rex. The T-Rex is common. The legendary is legendary. Will the T-Rex ever win in a fight?
Are they leveled up or what?
Yeah, max. So just start with max level T-Rex versus max level legendary. If those two things fight, will the T-Rex ever win? If it's just the one card.
Well, you see, like this is where I think we get into the question of how things are going to work, right? Like, let's say if you have a draft set and there's like 4 or 5 cards or whatever that you're able to summon up in that draft, and then somebody throws like 5 T-Rexes, they're like maxed out, as high as you can get them. Like, let's say, like, the first one goes down, but takes out most of the health of the first legendary, then the second one finishes it off, and then basically you have 4 full-powered, like, common Tyrannosaurus or whatever versus whatever the next card that comes out is. And, I mean, like, I can see, like, that there be some situations where, like, a common cheese deck or something like that could overrun like a power deck that doesn't have like a lot of synergy. But like, I mean, I'm thinking if you're putting.
But hold on, before you're even there, like, Chromatic Dragon is going to go have a high damage output. Flying and Rage, Trample and Fear, it's going to go mess with that T-Rex. But just imagine the fight between. Forget about stats. Forget about anything like that. You have a max level common and a max level legendary. Does the legendary win every single time?
I mean, I think it just depends on what the stats are. Like, I mean, if you have like a legendary that can't hit flying or something like that, and it's a flying common, then I mean, I guess essentially it's like a guaranteed victory for whatever the flying card would be. Or
the flying will just make it harder. We're not going to make it so that any. I guess my point is that. At some point, if you make it so that the stats are so much higher, you practically guarantee that the common can never win. And I don't think that should be the case. I think, I don't know. I think the legendary should be able to beat the max level. A max level legendary should be able to beat the max level common 85, 95% of the time. But somewhere in that 5 to 15%. The common should have some chance to go kill that legendary. It shouldn't just be a 0%. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it just has to. You see, I don't know. I'm thinking more like this is going to be like strategy based and less just like a straight up number crunch. Because if it's just like a straight number crunch, then pretty much if you have a really high defense,
I know,
then
but that gets into like really that's much more complicated than the discussion that I'm ready to have right now. I mean, what the reason why I'm choosing 2 big monsters is that like. Maybe we're going to have common mana pools where the fight's going to be 50 mana and you'll have like 40 cards that you could go put in there. But I also think that let's just imagine we're going to have a tournament. There's only 8 mana that you're allowed to bring into this. And so somebody's going to bring in a big dragon and somebody's going to bring in the T-Rex that's max level and they're going to fight. Out of 100 fights, how many times will the T-Rex beat the dragon? Is it 0?
I mean, I'm guessing there have to be like some hard matchups like that. I mean, whenever just like think about like in a game like Hearthstone, right? Like some cards just always lose to other cards.
Yeah,
like that's the point.
Well,
they're counters.
And it's the counter, yeah. I mean, I basically the T-Rex doesn't strike me as like a counter card. It just strikes me as like a big beast, right? And so a dragon is kind of like a big beast that's better. So the question is, how much better is the dragon big beast versus a T-Rex big beast? Where the T-Rex probably isn't like a high skill card. Maybe you're not like building mega decks out of this. It's just a big card to eat other ones.
Well, there also has to be taking into consideration the fact that like some of these cards are much more rare than other cards. So like by their very nature, I think that they have to be more powerful just because to fit the rarity, right?
Totally agree. What we're really Alfred Lord Tennyson. There's a funny quote about him. He's kind of this really saucy gentleman. And he goes up to a lady of the court And he says, "Excuse me, ma'am, would you have sex with me for $1 million?" And the lady says, "Well, yes, I would, Lord Tennyson." And he says, "Would you have sex with me for $1?" And she says, "No. What kind of girl do you think I am?" And he says, "Well, we've already determined that. I'm just bickering over price." And so, to me, I'm doing the same thing here. Like, we've already determined that legendaries are going to be better than commons. There is zero doubt in my mind. But the question is, how much better should they be? Is a legendary so wonderfully legendary that no matter what a common does, it can't beat it and it can't win? Or is there some chance that it can? And if there's some chance that it can, what is that chance? And then how do I build that into the stats? I would say at a minimum, I guess this goes back to D&D, like, you know, if I roll a natural 1, then that dragon, like, somehow while fighting claws at itself and rips up its own heart and it dies. Like, there has to be at least like a 5% chance that my max level common can go beat a max level legendary if they have an equal mana cost and those are the only two things that are fighting. I might even put it as high as a 15%. So that would be my personal range, is that if I design this so that the legendary is gonna win somewhere between 17 and 19 times out of 20 for just a really simple matchup like that, then I think I would have done my job well. Does that resonate, or does that sound like it's too much or too little?
Well, what I'm thinking is, basically, if a legendary costs more, like it has more stats available, it should cost more to summon it, right?
No, because it's not, because the mana cost, when I summon a common, I'm going to use an easy number. A common at 1 mana is going to get 100 skill points. And a common at level 2 is going to get 200. Or not at level 2. For 2 mana cost, we'll get 200. A 3 mana cost will get 300. So, like, for every mana, it's going to get 100. And then the question is, if that's how that works, then what should a legendary get? Is it going to get 10,000 per level? At which point, there's never a chance that the common can beat it. Does it get 101 so that it's like an infinitesimally small advantage to be a legendary? Like, that's a pretty big spectrum, but what this conversation is meant to do is narrow down on just how much of a difference is there per mana cost between a common and a legendary.
I would think it has to be very, very high. Like, I'm thinking like 90-95% the legendary always wins.
So but okay, I said between 5 and 15, and you just said 90 to 95. So, like, you and I are off on a percentage by 5% in the range. I mean, we're actually pretty close.
Right. I mean, I'm saying, like, to keep it a game and, like, not just like a guaranteed, yeah, but I mean, like, I'm thinking, like, grand scheme of things, you're more gonna get into like the realm of, like, crazy possibilities when you're running like smart, epic, rare combinations versus like a really just like money grab legendary combo that doesn't have any synergy.
Right. So once I get past the one deck, once we get past like the 1 versus 1, and now you start combining abilities, now it's not going to be that, because how well you define your combination of powers. So, like, okay, your dragon imagine your dragon is just this big dumb thing, and it just does a bunch of damage. And then imagine that you put together a team that has a tank that can sit there and absorb damage. You have a DPS that can hurt the other monster, and it's not regenerating. And then imagine you have a healer that's in there that's healing your tank. and so your tank kind of lives forever. The DPS wears the dragon down, and the healer keeps your tank from dying. You know, a team of weaker things that's well put together has just killed the dragon. And I think that should be possible, because you're going to use like 3 rares to go kill this legendary, and somehow you have to keep it alive while killing the other thing. That should be possible. But that now gets into like way more complicated things of like, well, if I mix these 3 cards, how will that fare against this other thing? That gets like way more complicated, and the math is going to go through the freaking roof, and it's going to be basically uncalculable from like a perspective of a game designer. But the 1 versus 1 match shouldn't be that hard to calculate, and if I figure out what percentage of the time the monster should win, you know, like I should be able to go. We either say, look, on a nat 20, so I'm going to do D20s because that's D&D. If I roll a 20-sided die, how many different numbers can come up and the T-Rex wins? It has to be at least a 20. It sounds like we have agreement that if it rolls a 19 or a 20, it can kill the dragon. Would a 17 also work? Or you have a 20 and 19. What about an 18? Do I include the 18? Does it have a 15% chance to win, or does it only have a 10% chance to win? And I think,
well, I think if you look at just how much more rare the cards are, then I think you've got to cap it at like 10.
Okay. I think I can do that. So I actually want to bring Jarvie on next, because he's been listening to this. He's actually another guy that's pretty heavily invested. So I want to see what his perspective on this take is, and then see if there's any consensus. And then I want to bring Toriko on, who's presumably going to talk about the story. So I agree with you, Clay. I think there's overlap, how to actually code that in and calculate that in. But I think if we start from a full level common has a 10% chance of beating a full level legendary, I can code around that. And if this group is comfortable with that, so why don't I want to put another straw poll in here. I'm going to put 5, 10, 15, and 20. That's the percent chance that a common card with a mana cost should be able to beat a legendary card with a mana cost. How many of you think it should win 5% of the time? How many think it should win 10% of the time, 15% of the time, or 20% of the time? I'm going to go put that in right now. So just put emojis under what I wrote. We don't need to put in our own numbers because that's too hard to track. But if you think that if the common should win 5% of the time, put an emoji under that. If you think it should win 10% of the time, put an emoji under that. If you think it's 15% of the time, put an emoji under that. And if you think it's 20% of the time, put an emoji under that. Run over that one more time. Shane, you're such a jerk. All right, Kevin. So you have a common card and you have a legendary card. And they're the same level. They're both max level and they're fighting. What percentage of the time can a common card beat the legendary? Well, I'm not going to talk about multi-commons because I don't want to think of like the deck just itself. So if you think, I mean, this is, there's a spread. So it seems like 20% is too high, and then it seems like there's somewhere between 5 and 10%. Maybe some think it's 15%. I mean, I'm inclined to think that it's 10% of the time the common can win. That's what I think I'm going to try to build this game around. And then you're going to have higher percentage chance if it's a rare, and a higher percentage chance if it's an epic. Okay, I want to go bring Jarvie on next. You guys can keep putting numbers into that or emojis into that because I'll keep looking at it. But Jarvie, hopefully your mic is working. Clay, thanks for coming on. Let me go bring Jarvie on here, and then
Sure.
Toriko, you're up next. Jarvie, you're muted. I didn't mute you. You have to unmute. Can you unmute? Jarvie, you're on air. Hello, hello. Can you unmute in Discord and talk to us? Why don't you disconnect and reconnect, hang up and come back on? All right, yeah, he left. Hopefully he comes back in just a second here, and then I can drag him on air again. I don't see Jarvie. I don't know if he like closed the whole program instead of just hit disconnect. Hit me to Crypto Fighters. I mean, I don't want it. Well, okay, here's Jarvie. Jarvie, can you try hitting mute again or unmute? Should be right down there at the bottom. I don't know how much Discording you do, but you're not server muted from my end. There you go. You're now unmuted. Are you there, Jarvie? Hello, hello. Jarvie, my dear.
I am here.
Hey, there we go. So that took a minute. Sorry, live audience.
Oh, there we go.
So what did you think of that discussion? Where did you land? Like, how many, to you, if the mana cost is the same, what percentage of the time should the common be able to beat the legendary?
Cost is the same, and see, that doesn't happen. That's not part of your world right here.
No, it absolutely is. The mana cost is the same. So you have like a level, a dragon that costs 8 mana. You have a T-Rex that costs 8 mana. You send them both into the arena.
Okay.
They cost the same amount of mana to summon that round.
Yes.
And now it's
then based on. Okay, yeah. If they're the same mana, I think that percentage goes way up.
Well, what do you think it is? Give me a number.
The thought on the stats you were just showing us, where the T-Rex is like 2 mana, and then I was like, the 8 mana guy should beat him every single time. But when you get 4 of them together,
I'm gonna go change.
Then
the T-Rex is not a 3 mana cost. Like that's not staying. I'm gonna go bring that up. So like a dragon's gonna be 8. I'm gonna go make a T-Rex 8 as well. So just imagine that they're the exact same mana cost, like, and assume that they don't have like a special advantage versus the other.
Okay.
Like how many times is that T-Rex gonna beat? If I have 100 fights between a T-Rex and the dragon, how many times will the T-Rex win?
T-Rex is a common. Okay, I could go by percentage. I'm not sure about how many times it wins, but I think it's than I thought. Because I was going off of different information, sorry. And I think some of the other people doing these polls maybe were the same confuses me, because we just listened to the whole conversation about the 2 mana and the 8 mana.
No, I mean, it's tricky.
Okay, yeah.
But assume that they cost the same mana. Maybe I wasn't clear about that, but you can even forget the name. Don't worry about T-Rex and a dragon. Just say like, a legendary and a common, and that's the only card that you bring in.
That's been leveled up,
and
to
they're
cost
both
8 mana.
They're both, well, the 8 mana isn't going to change with level. It like a level 1 dragon is going to cost you 8 mana. A level 4 dragon is going to cost you 8 mana. I don't think that actually changes, because it's still just a dragon. It's just a more experienced dragon.
I was kind of doing some math on the side based off these other aspects, so I don't know if I have a really solid answer for you on this, but I think it goes way down.
I'm
I
not
think
wondering, like, we can change
30%, 20% better.
It's 20% better. So you.
But how many times does it win? I don't know what that means on the other way around with that math.
So you think that it wins 20% of the time, or you think it's 20% better, which would make it like a 70-30 or something?
Both 8 mana in an 8 mana tournament sort of thing, and I think a legendary should have a little bit of boost. But then again, you were talking about ranges and that RNG, you know, like, so how many times does it win? I don't know. I'll do the math and give you an actual answer, but
No,
being put on the spot, I'm going to say, like...
I don't want the actual answer. I want the numbers to match what we think it ought to, what that percentage likelihood ought to be. So I can make the numbers match that. I just want to make sure that, like, the expectations that we are building are what the community want from us. You know, I could make it so that the common never wins, but I don't think that's fair to the 8-year-old.
No, I think it should win.
It should win some of the time. Should it be 50-50? Oh, hell no. You got a legendary and you earned the legendary, or you bought the legendary. It shouldn't be 50-50.
I'm leaning 70-30.
70-30. So that you're on the high side to me. I mean, I was going to make it 90-10, but maybe it's closer to 70-30. You know, when I was looking at that poll, it seemed like it seems that most people lean.
Well, on my poll, I put it way down low because I didn't understand it completely.
Okay. So I don't know. That's another vote of confidence for. You're basically saying make a smaller difference between legendaries and commons, right? Because you want the common to be able to, like, win with some chance. That's not like, 5% of the time.
Maybe less. Yeah, maybe less than 70-30, but I was still going off the 2 to 8, and so I had a lot of thoughts on that.
All right. Well, what do you have in mind for 2 to 8? So, like, when we get into 2 to 8, I start thinking, look, if you have a legendary, but you have a really well thought out team of commons, then maybe there it's 60-40, or maybe there it's like 70-30, and that would be totally okay to me. I think it goes up when you start getting to smart teams versus just one big dumb thing that happens to be good. So I would think that, like, the team of commons that's played well and designed to kill that monster, even if they're just commons, that percentage chance goes up quite a bit. But I wanted to start with a base case of, imagine you just have 2 tanky monsters. One is legendary and one is a common. Let's start with that. To me, I think it's probably somewhere between 10 to 15% of the time the common wins, and otherwise 85% of the time the legendary wins. But then you get into smart fights, and now if you design it well, maybe even maybe not a team of commons, but a team of some epics and commons and maybe a rare might actually have a 50-50 shot versus that legendary if you've made it smart.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a group of dragon-killing specialists that are, between rares and commons that equal the same amount of mana as that legendary dragon, then yeah, I think that makes sense.
So maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's even higher when you get to a smart team so that you favor the team. But team play, I'm not ready to think about that yet. But I do think that the teams should drastically raise your ability to kill the legendaries or to kill the better monsters, because we want this to be a game of strategy, not a game of, well, I paid the most and my cards are max level, so I win. No. We want it so that you picked really good cards, they play well together as a team, you figured out how to either DPS down the enemy first, you figured out how to keep your tank alive, you figured out how to become immune to the magic damage that was really popular for the last couple weeks. You figured out a strategy that lets you beat whatever is the most popular thing. So I definitely want that to be there.
I think in the whole conversation that you were having with Matt, is I think maybe a couple of us were just worried about the devaluation of things that we thought should maintain value, and this helps me to, the mana aspect is what helps, right?
Yeah, the mana is what's going to keep these things like equal, so that not equal in the sense that like that they have a 50% chance of winning, but the mana cost is also going to make it so that like, you can't just summon a full team of badasses and win. Like there's going to be some restrictions in here so that smart play, the people that play smartest, and honestly the people that not only play smartest but predict the most popular setup and what's going to beat it should be the ones that win every week.
My thinking along these lines is just, I don't play Magic. I've never have done that. So there's going to be people that are going to have better discussions with you along that lines. But mine is more of on an economic thing, that this mana is going to help us maintain value to these cards, and just keep that in mind when you're going through. And I liked what you have here on this spreadsheet that's still up.
Yeah, hopefully.
The 41.25 and the 50, and in that area you could have the common, the rare be maybe, if the common is 40, then the rare is maybe a 44, or something to that effect. But and that random possibilities still kind of help bring it within the realm of beating, right?
Right, and so if your common can beat the legendary 10 to 15% of the time, your rare should be maybe 15 to 20. Your epic should be 20 to 25, or maybe even 30% of the time it wins. And then the legendary versus the legendary of equal mana cost should be 50-50, unless they happen to have strengths or weaknesses versus the other.
I like that.
So, once I have a ballpark for these numbers, then it's not actually quite as hard to go build systems that are designed to do that. So I just want to listen to this community and figure out, well, I bought a legendary, so it should beat a common 100 times out of 100. Or, well,
I mean, I wrote that comment, and I meant percentage, but so don't go quoting that one.
No. Well, that's not that. I mean, I wasn't actually trying to pick on that. I mean, I think that I'm just trying to find where the expectations are for the community, and I'm not going to promise that I'll just go do the whim of the community anytime. This is still the game that me and Yava are making, and we'll have final say. But this conversation is really about trying to narrow the range. We don't want it to be 0. We don't want it to be 50-50. So what should that spread be? I think
still within the range of possibility, but you have all those.
But it's unlikely.
Random stuff. Yeah.
So I think
cool.
10 to 15% for a max common to beat a max legendary of the same mana cost, if they don't have like special abilities that affect the other. 10 to 15% sounds about right. And then we'll up it for the rares and up it for the epics, and then the legendaries versus the legendaries should be 50-50.
Quick, does that health go down during the battle? So if there's a group of 4 commons of 2, each going against a legendary, right? The legendary health will go down, right? It doesn't reset for every time it's battling a new one, right?
Well, the way it works, the way that we're planning on this working is imagine I put up a legendary and you put up 4 monsters. I kill 3 of your monsters, but the 4th one lives to kill my dragon. So you get to go on to the next tournament, or the next tier. All of your monsters come back alive. 3 of them have a debuff where 75% of their health is all that they have. They don't start with a full 100% because they died the previous round. So it's enough so that it hurts you, and how well you beat your opponent actually impacts you in the next round, but it's not so much to automatically mean, well, 3 of your monsters died in the first round and none of them, and therefore they're all screwed and you die immediately the next round. We didn't want that.
Yeah.
We wanted a small debuff, something that would be meaningful but not guarantee victory or loss.
I'm on board now with what you're talking about now that I kind of understand it better. And yeah, so I trust that. I was a little worried at first, and I was like, wait, what? But now I understand.
Okay, and it feels like we're going mostly in the right direction.
I did have a thought about earlier on when you were talking about stories and stuff, so I don't know if you saw my conversation on that.
I'm not very good at reading through chat at the same time that we're talking about this stuff, so feel free to repeat yourself.
Someone else on tour, I think what you said was going on. We should get a group.
Oh, I did see this.
Interested in helping you guys out and in putting together a sort of mind map. I see you love spreadsheets as much as me.
Yeah,
or maybe putting tons of information into there that helps someone that has the skill set for writing. And I know that you like going both those directions. The storyteller can kind of throw something in and we kind of work off of each other. Or like you talked about how the map can kind of
it's iterative.
Basically inform some of the other stuff. Either way, but like there's going to be some people on here that would love to do that don't have the skill set of writing per se, but love maybe mind mapping and brainstorming and putting in, coming up with random words and random ideas, or like the backstories as far as ideas, and then someone can put that into beautiful language.
I could conceivably do that after I get some of the campaign setting down. So I have some ideas that Azari and I have been talking about offline to try to figure out what is the main story arc that's here. And I want to go a little bit dark. I want to make sure that there's some nefarious things that are happening. So we're going to bill everything as this sweet, wonderful community, and all things are wonderful. And then as you level, you're going to realize, oh, there's some seedy things going on here. This is not good or okay. And then that's going to have elements that play out in character arcs and some of the Easter eggs that we'll bury in here. For parts of that story, I'm definitely completely happy to share that with the public and have the public chime in. For like the legendary stories and the legendary story arcs, I think I'm going to keep that super close to the vest so that it's a mystery and and there really aren't anybody other than like a handful of employees and maybe like some of the mods or some of like what you're describing as like you're on the content,
small committee,
you're on the short content, you're on like the screenwriters team or like the scripting team, like when it comes to everybody except for the legendaries, I'm going to get lots and lots of people involved because I want community involvement. But I'm going to keep this like ultra top secret for the legendaries and the sort of mysteries that we're going to reveal during the game about some of the shady underbelly of the realm of Steem Monsters, which still needs a name.
You could still get, I mean, those stories can still be close to the vest, like you're saying, but you could get some of us that are willing to put in a good amount of time creating the backbone to this, like you showed the book, like the backbone. They didn't just create the book first, they created this backbone so they know how everything interacted. We could help create the red values, and we list down some of the values, and you could go through it and say, no, they don't value this one. We put out
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. Maybe what I'll do, I think I'm going to do this through a post maybe, is I'll collect some people that put names down and say, we'd like to help create the story. And so like, what I'd really like to do is say, all right, I'm going to take control of the legendary aspect and like the major key events. I'm going to take ownership of that. And then for part of that and for like epics and down, I'm going to put Ozaria in control of that. So she'll know the campaign setting, and she'll know sort of story arcs that we're looking for in general. We'll have a campaign setting and a sort of style guide. And then hopefully what we can do is take a step down and say, all right, Jarvie, you're in charge of some of the flavor for the red team. Tell us about these cities. Tell us about the nomadic people. Tell me about some of the tribes. Who do they worship? What kind of magic do they have? How do they engage in commerce? And then when they're in this common Mount Mox, how do they interact with one another? When they're at the grand tournament, what are they like in the stadium? We'll have somebody that kind of takes ownership for the different teams or the different elements and becomes sort of the lore master for that. And maybe that's a paid position, maybe that's a volunteer position that then, all this stuff that you're writing is going into the official website, and then everybody that gets their Fire Beetle card, they're all directed back to your Steam It page, and hopefully they're like, wow, all this red lore is really awesome. The blue lore, it's not quite as good, and maybe we're funneling, you give us content and we give you marketing exposure as all these people come to play this game and then learn to love your writing and go to your page. So I don't quite know how this is going to work, but I do like the idea of getting my whole thing is going to be, let's make sure the audience is involved in this. Maybe I think I want some control still over the campaign setting so that everybody has common rules to work from. But once that's in place, then I want to be able to turn this stuff over to the public and say, the volunteers or the people that are really invested in this, they get to go build this with all their heart.
Did you understand that concept of a mind map that helps those people to understand, hey, red values this? You talked about all those things, but having them into a graphical representation or a mind map sort of thing that gives them a quick summary, oh, hey, I'm not going to write a story about death, just loving life, everything, because they value death.
So,
very simplistic.
Do you know the seed of life? Do you know what that is a reference to? It's kind of esoteric. The seed of life, the fruit of life. I think there's even a tree of life. I can't hear you if you're answering.
The concept of tree of life.
So I just put an image down below or into the chat. One of the things you can do, this is actually an incredibly good brainstorming thing. What you can, let me see if I can do a really simple version of this. Oh, that didn't transfer. Let me find another one. Hold on. All right, this isn't all that sexy. Let me full screen this. No, I still want a different image. Give me one more second here. All right, so here's an exercise that we can do. So we're going to do this for the red team. So I'm going to put red into the middle here. Okay, so if you're this sort of...
Are we supposed to... Okay, yeah.
We're Team Red. What are 3 values that Team Red is going to hold very, very strongly as sort of a group of people?
Courage. It's the third.
I only heard one of them. Courage. What are the other 2?
Courage. And I don't have a... What's a good third one?
Well, I still can't hear the one before courage. Jarvie, you're cutting out. So I need 3 values. Courage and 2 others. You want passion. Passion is a good one.
Power.
All right, that's great. And power. Okay, so now we have courage, passion, and power. What happens when you intersect courage and passion? What happens there? What do you get when those two meet? When courage and passion meet, what do you get? Courage.
A love for war. That's what it sounds like to me.
Courage and passion is warlust. What do you get when you combine passion and power? You're cutting out, Jarvie. Say it again or type it. Bloodlust. So we get warlust, now bloodlust. And then what do we get when we combine courage and power? What does courage and power give me? Oh, I see bravery. Courage and power might be bravery. Bravery and courage are kind of the same thing. What do you get with courage and power? Strength? So just like that, we've created some of like the first kind of character mapping of these people as a culture. The red team is courageous, warlusting, passionate, bloodlusting. They want power, or they're people of power, and they have sort of this inner strength about them. And so with a 4-minute exercise here, now we could go out to the next level, and if we wanted, we could say, what is a combination of strength and courage? What is a combination of strength and power? What is the combination of power and bloodlust? What is the combination of bloodlust and passion? What is a combination of passion and warlust? What is a combination of warlust and courage? And when we do that sort of second round, now you get even more flavor text around who these people are. And now we can start building archetypes of who these kind of groups are, what they represent, why they represent it, how we build it into their culture, what they worship, how they trade, what their cultures are. But it can start from this kind of tree of life, very simple design, and we can expand it so that we know a lot about the cultures because we know a lot about what they value, and it goes from there. Does that sound like, for you folks that are kind of in the audience, does this sound like a good way to go build out who these people are and what they value and what their culture is going to be like? Do you feel like, I guess, does that look like a good starting point? Type in 5, and if that looks like a crappy starting point for the red team, type in 1. Kittens are their soft spot. You bastard. There'll be no kittens references. Sorry, Zarya. Who's on board with this thing? If you think it's good, put in a 5. If you think it's crappy, put in a 1. Yeah, the Reds feel kind of Klingon-y right now. But I'm sure that we can get a little bit more specific than this. Like, Klingons weren't always, like, completely hot-headed. I sort of imagine, like, this red team has, I just imagine them being sort of Scottish redheads that are, like, quick to anger. So, some of you are putting in, what do you like about this if you're a 5? And then what is it, what's lower? I mean, this doesn't have to be the final one, but just, this is my methodology that I think I'm going to go apply, as long as the Reds are total douches. Yeah, I mean, I don't want good and bad. I really like the idea of equilibrium. That all of these people are fighting for the same resources or the same thing or the same glory. It won't necessarily be good guys and bad guys so much as people that have different wants and needs and their what level of willingness they have to achieve them. Evil Conan. Okay, so let's go.
This was just a 3-minute exercise, right? I mean, we could obviously change the first 3, and then the whole total outcome will be different.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm trying to do is show what the process is that I want to do to build the value chain. This is not the value chain. This is demonstrating what the process is. So what I would do is me and Azari are going to set the campaign setting with, we got the map. We're going to go do a second round with the map. We're going to build some cities, and we're going to get some like key geographic places and maybe even some names. And then we're going to build the campaign setting around that so that people will know at least some of this stuff. And then we're going to go populate the crap out of the campaign setting by trying to get sort of teams or groups that say, all right, I'm here to go take over what the like green people are like, and they'll fill out this kind of seed of life or tree of life to go build out a value system. And then after we get through their value system, then we can start saying, well, if that's what they value, how does their culture reflect that? And then we'll know how they interact, why they trade, what they worship, how they worship, and what stories should we build about them? Are the Greens going to be war-lusty, bloodlusty people? Are they, what is their what are they fighting, or what are they passionate about? How do we build this? I think you should contest some of the key place names. I still want to know. I still want to know what I should call the realms. I don't just want to call it the land of Steem Monsters or the land of monsters. Like I want a name. So my short-term name is Agrodia, but I am not using Agrodia. That's just sort of what I'm calling this thing in my head briefly. All right. Jarvie, other thoughts about stats? Because I want to go bring Toriko on, and I do want to go to bed here.
You cleared up most of my concerns about it, and just obviously I think you understand that you're creating more than just, and we obviously don't want just people with tons of money to win, but there's going to be a market, and people aren't spending $500 because they just want to play a card game. They're just going to have some sort of value in the end as well.
Yeah, I get it. I'm doing my best to honor that, and also honor the 10-year-old kid that doesn't have the $5 but has $10 and wants to get involved. So I'm trying to balance those two. I do think the person with $500 should win more frequently, but just like the legendary versus the common, the rich developer that lives in their basement shouldn't beat the 8-year-old kid 100% of the time. Maybe 90.
Well, you're doing things like creating tournaments that have a certain mana level, or you are perhaps even creating some sort of league aspect, so.
Yeah, and some PvP cool. elements, too, or PvE. It doesn't have to be entirely combative.
And then you limit it and say, hey, what about these sorts of things? Like once there is more value cost to certain things, and you could also limit games by the value of different cards. You can't have, a $500 cap on the value of cards in such and such tournament. So
yep, and we could have it so that in this round you have to come up with the max mana pool is 12, but you can't have a monster that costs more than 2. So you have to build a team of 6 different level 2 monsters, and that's what that round, and that's what this tournament's like. And the next day it might be, only greens, and only greens that add up to a total of 5. All right, the next one, it's going to be any color is fine, and the maximum mana is 16, and just go from there.
I think that's That's great, and you're still going to allow for some sort of like high stakes poker sort of thing to go in there for those people that like to rails in there to kind of go and beat up on each other.
Yep. So there'll be paid tournaments and these free tournaments. Like, I'm not going to commit to every tournament being worth 1,000 SBD, but I certainly want, you know, we make enough money that I could do 1,000 SBD once a week, every week. And hopefully that's enough draw to keep people paying for cards such that it can support the 1,000 SBD tournament minimums that happen like once per week, or every Saturday there's a free tournaments that are worth up to 1,000 or more.
Yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm excited to hear what Tora has to say, though, so I'm going to let her jump on.
Rock on.
Unless you have any questions for me.
Nope, that's good for now. All right, let's go grab Torco, and then I think I'm going to bed after Torco. Hello, Torco. Hello, Torco. Torco, my dear. You're on air. Madam Torco. Bunny. She left me. All right, anybody else that wants to come on? If you would like to come on air, type in airtime. And this is your shot. Otherwise, I'm going to bed. Hello, hello. Hey, dude, you're here. Oh, I don't hear you. You got to talk, Torco. You're on air. Anybody else want airtime? She's here? Well, I see her here, and she's talking, but she's not chatting. Anybody else want airtime for this? Going once? I guess I should give you more time. Hopefully Torco's coming back in a moment. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Yeah, you can't hear her either. So, there's Tor. Hey, Torco. You there?
Okay.
Hey, now
can you
you're
hear me
back.
now?
I can hear you great.
Yeah. It happens every time. Each time I go on air and then I go off and I try to get back on again, the mic does something funny. So I always have to close it down and get back in. Anyway, here I am.
Okay. So which aspect of this was on your brain?
A couple different ones because you were talking. The first one, I just want to say on my end, I favor starting off somewhat of a higher, like you were discussing the 10% better, 20% better, 30% better. And I think to start off with, maybe to help the little people get their deck a little bit, should have a slightly bigger chance of winning so that people can build their decks up and then gradually, decrease that idea. Just because I think a lot of people starting out won't be into it, and they'll need to have a little bit of faith that they can ever win something.
So you want it so that at low level, there's a bigger chance. Now, you want it so at low level, there's a bigger chance that the legendary kicks butt, but max level things, you want them a little closer together?
Just so that if you have a common and you're fighting, say, a rare, it doesn't even need to be a legendary. It's just a little bit easier to your set or to level it up.
Well, I mean, the amount of time it takes to level up all these cards is theoretically about a year. So if just straight gameplay, it actually doesn't matter which cards you have. All of them will take a year to level if you're using it every day.
Well, then if you think about that, you're giving a tremendous advantage to anybody who's just stuck $500 into the game.
Well, you're giving an upfront advantage to the people that spent money. Yeah, that is true. but over the long term you're not, because everybody will eventually get max level characters. Yeah, to
If
reach.
you have somebody who buys in and they have max level characters, they will still max level characters and be able to keep on winning.
They will win at the beginning, but then over time, like if they have max level characters and they're fighting with their characters, they stop gaining experience because there's no more experience to gain. So everybody else in the game is leveling their characters. They'll eventually catch up, and then it's no longer a matter of who spent the most money. It's who's playing the best cards.
So you're looking at this as a really, really, really long-term investment.
Yeah, I mean, I think people play Magic the Gathering for 15 or 20 years or more. I mean, people that started still play, and if they felt like there was still value, or if they could play in tournaments without having to collect $8 million worth of cards, and it was just a full money sink instead of a return on their investment, that a lot of them would still be there. They get kids and family, and then it's hard to play in the sort of like
right
in the tournaments and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this is something that you sit there and you like play 3 games and then suddenly you have max level characters. There's got to be, like, again, part of the goal of this is to keep people coming back to the Steam ecosystem, so I'm going to enforce that through making it.
You also want them to keep on coming back to the game. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, think about both sides of that. You know, you want to have.
That's what the level cap is there for. I want to make money, so I want people to buy cards, so I want there to be an advantage to buying cards, but I also want it so that 8-year-old kid isn't totally screwed. So what happens is, if they play every day, they'll get cards, and their cards can level, and eventually their cards will level to the same point that the guy who spent a lot of money got them to.
Okay.
It's just going
I
to
just
take
want
more
you
time.
correct you on something, because can we actually have 8-year-old kids in here playing?
Yeah, presumably if they're working with their parents, they can. You are supposed to be 13 to have your own Steam account and be totally on your own. But presumably if you have a parent that owns the account and a 8-year-old that's sitting there playing Steem Monsters, then that probably works.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more along. We're going to have 13-year-olds. I don't see us having very many 8-year-olds. Okay, so I guess I wanted to say, you might have seen it in chat, is I went ahead and created in the Steem Monsters server, went ahead and made me a writer's channel. And my idea is to get anybody interested in writing and brainstorming and figuring out different that the writers will need to agree on to build on, that we hammer it out there. Because I think that's important. If you have too many people writing all over the place, to say, okay, well, we like this concept, but it doesn't agree with the storyline at all, you're going to have to do a lot of rewriting.
Yeah. Well, that's...
You're getting that. Yeah.
Well, so, no, I mean, that is the strategy. I mean, I was planning on doing some of the basic rule setting, or like the overall campaign setting guidelines a little bit more closed source than that, but that's fine. I mean, I do want this to be a pretty open community-based thing. To me, I know that you see it a little differently. To some extent, I feel like, I did some wilderness first responder training, which is like an EMT, but in the woods without an ambulance. And one of the thoughts is, like, if you have a bleeding person on a mountain and you're trying to get this guy down the mountain, like, sometimes if you put him in this part of the grass to take a rest, or put him in that part of the grass to take a rest, it doesn't really matter. You just make a call. It's close enough anyways, and then you just keep going. So my thought would be something like, okay, I have a path. My path is get a map, Once I have a map, then I can build stories around that map. And I can improve the map over time, and I can add to the map. It doesn't have to be completely static for the rest of eternity, but we're going to get a map. Then we can go set some campaign guidelines of these are the cities, these are the common areas. We can go figure out some of the cultures, and then from there, then we can dive into what the stories are for all the different characters. And if we have a good campaign setting and we have a good map, then all of our stories that the players encounter during this should be internally consistent and hopefully share some of the values of the different cultures that we're going to create in this.
I'm sort of coming angles because I think while it's important to world build, you might want to broaden your scope there, because I heard, and I might have been mishearing because I was half doing things in the help channel and answering other questions and over in the other server. It sounded like a lot of you making decisions was with a couple of people and then just going for it. And I hear a lot of really good ideas coming out that I saw that you're not necessarily thinking of.
Well, I mean,
important to get that feedback.
I think it's a mix. Like this is a brainstorming session that is public and open to everybody, and people have been putting things into the chat, and we're having that conversation. And then at times, I'm going to go from here's really broad to this is what we're going to do. And then once we get that, then I can go really broad and try to capture some ideas, see what fits best, and then say, okay, out of all of that, this is what we're going to do. And then when we get to those, this is what we're going to do, I'm going to say, all right, this part we did the map. Now the map's done. This part we're doing the campaign setting. So let's go get these groups to build the campaign setting. Okay, now the campaign setting is done. Now we're doing the storylines for some of these characters. So here's the characters that you guys get, go write those. Here's the ones that you guys get, go write those. And so it's this iterative process of, open it up, get some community feedback, then kind of hunker down, build out a system. All right, now we have a system. Let's open it up. Let's get some ideas. All right, that's how you apply it. Here's the team that's going to apply it for these either colors or types of monsters, or that some of this is still to be determined. But I think going back and forth between public comments and then private groups make decisions, and then public comments and private group makes decisions, that's how I think we're going to get to a pretty well decentralized experience that people get to co-create.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing here is, maybe once a week you're going to have the public. You're just being over in the Steem Monsters server. Is you have the beginnings of a lot of possible. Already now you have a server. There's 108 people online right now.
Yeah.
Let me see. 300 some odd. 339 people offline. You already have over 500 people.
Yeah, it's got to be in the top 10 Discord groups already, I'm betting.
I think you also need to put some attention into how that's going to grow.
Oh yeah. No, I think that's my primary focus. Is how do I
wanted to make sure you were looking at that.
Yeah. So the number one focus right now is getting the game to work. So everything to me is built around how do I get product functioning. Once product is functioning, then I don't think, once I get the key pieces of this game working, then I can shift all my attention to story building and community building, because I think that's what's going to make this the most immersive experience that you can have on the block. So no, I think community building and but you're saying, hey, you got to make sure this works. I mean, I haven't seen any Discord group go from 0 to 500 people in a week. So this feels I mean, this is faster than PALNet right now, and PALNet hit 20,000. So I feel like we're going in the right direction. And it's going to keep having my attention. And I see what is it? Ever noticed that is saying go get the names of people involved. Like, I'm definitely going to get the names of people involved. Apparently Torco built the writers group. Go tell us in the writers group that you want to be involved. I mean, I also have to have the like capacity to know enough of what I want to do with this system to know where it's going. So I think because the map's not completely done, I'm still like a week away from being able to like really completely build out the campaign setting with help from the community. So I to me it's a little bit early, but who cares? A week isn't that big of a deal. So I mean, if you're interested, go put your name down and start spitballing shit in the writer's room, and we'll see who comes out and is involved, and we'll see how that goes.
That's where I'm starting. I also, I'm interested in this is going to take off the community within the server. Because right now it looks a little bit, and I don't know if there's anybody that's really involved in trying to coming at this from having been involved in PAL and seeing how that got put together in an orderly fashion, and I think that's important.
Well, there are some similarities. It's not the same. PAL is a public service, whereas Steem Monsters is a business. Those two things are going to be functioning differently. How much differently? I gotta invent that as we go. But trying to, there are parts that are going to mimic one another, and I've certainly learned a ton from running PAL for a year in terms of how to build a Discord server. So I think we're going to be okay getting teams together, getting authors together, managing that process, and having it kind of come out with a consistent story that's good. Oh, look, let's go get rid of this Randfa article. Doink. Okay. Should I tweak things? You dig the sounds I made. Oh, so this is sound waves. Yeah, the sounds you made are awesome. I'm now thinking that we need some game music sound waves. So, you know, you can sit there and there's going to be some kind of like repeating sound. So like I'm in the trading room and or on the trading page, and it's going to sound like, you know, there's sounds of people trading and shouting and trying to figure out how to buy and sell, or maybe there's just the like when you go in, there's a 1 or 2 seconds where everyone's like buy, 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 sell, 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 this is for sale. Like you hear different sounds of the trading floor, but then that kind of fades away because it's a little obnoxious, and you're hearing just sort of like background music of like bum, or like I don't know, I'm gonna go to Seven Nation Army, do 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 do, and you just have some sort of like repeating music track that's back there. And then, but like you're going to be in the grand tournament, and now it's going to be sort of like trumpets and like, you know, it's going to sound like you're about to go to war, you know, do 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 do, and it's like they're about to announce you to the battlefield. So like we need sounds and music that are going to play while people are sort of doing different parts of this game, so that again you're getting kind of immersed into what it is that you're doing and what point that's at. So Soundwaves, if you want to make some tracks for what you think the trading floor would sound like, or what you think it sounds like when you enter the grand tournament, or when you're sitting there strategizing about your dailies or about your campaign, what music and what sounds are we going to encounter? That would be awesome. What else is on your list, Tor? Because going to bed is on my short list.
You're getting to your bedtime. I think probably we can write down a bunch of ideas that I have because I'm kind of scattered myself from skipping dinner, and then I'll just give it to Azaria.
I'll just put it in the writer's room. You built the room, go put it in there. So we have products.
Well, it's not all about writing. That's the thing.
Well,
you know, some of it's just organization ideas.
All right.
Raggy, you just don't know it.
There's not a suggestion room for organization ideas, but there is one for product suggestions. There is one for writer's room. We'll take. There's one for tech support. Like, we're gonna, as we expand, I'll keep expanding the ways that we take input to go build user input into this game. In fact, I'm ready to bet that this is going to be the most user-built experience. So, like, actually, I have a term. I have a here's one of my next posts about this. Is that when I grew up, I played choose your own adventure games. And you would read the book and you get to the parts and you'd say, this is what I'm going to do, that's what I'm going to do, and like things would happen and you'd skip to different pages. That was choose your own adventure. The blockchain is going to allow us to do build your own adventure, where the players of the game are going to have way more input into this game than anything else that's come before it. And we are going to build a brand new experience for, you know, consumers that want to be part of the storyline of what they create. That's the objective. We'll see how well I execute, but I want this to be a decentralized story in that we are all co-creating it together, by literally writing parts of it, but also by, you know, a good example is the first achievement's going to be feed the burn, in reference to Bernie Sanders, who was the first to get all the cards in the alpha. So, like, you'll unlock the achievement when you get all the cards. It'll be called feed the burn, but there's also going to be, like, I'm thinking that there's like a plague or some sort of infection or some kind of like mental illness that's going across all the people, that one of these factions is going to be shoving into the others to go protect themselves for some reason, and they're going to get sickened by the burn. And, you know, different groups will be resisting this, other groups will have succumbed to this, but the burn is going to be some kind of like motivating force that makes people that are otherwise well-behaved and healthy human beings become kind of depraved and sickened because they have the burn and they have to feed the burn. And, you know, in the Warlust clan, that might mean that they need blood and they become like reapers in Firefly. In some other group, it's just going to accentuate sort of negative tendencies of these archetypes to heighten levels, where, you know, if the white group is about protection and sort of astral and aloof, and they're going to go from protective to being like xenophobic and exclusive and reclusive, because they have to feed the burn, and it's going to accentuate all of their like negative aspects. And that's going to come back because I need a secretary and a project manager. I know. Well, we got Azaria. Azaria's starting. But, you know, Degen, I need to know product costs before I know anything else, because that's going to determine what I have to work with for marketing and for content development and all this other stuff. So I got to figure out what my programmer is going to cost me before I figure out what else I can do. So that's what I got, Tor.
Right.
How's that?
Okay.
How does that sound? Does that sound like a healthy blockchain game to you?
Well, I think it has the start of it. I think some of it is a little all over the place, and you might, you know, and I'm thinking as a writer, need, you know, to have finite limits on a world. They can't be all over the place.
Yeah, that's literally the reason why I want to write the rules for the campaign setting. Welcome to Steem Monsters. You are now part of the world of Agrodia. Here are the cities, here are the people, here are the towns, here are the NPCs. It's not limitless, it's finite. This is what you have to work with when you build your stories. So, you and I are on the same page. We're going to get that first. And then, well, like we'll build some of these other ones that are like common cards and not really like central to the story arc or anything. Like the Fire Beetle probably isn't going to impact the whole storyline of this thing. So we can just build that shit in the background and not worry too much about the details. But by the time that we're building the legendary stories, we better know every single character, their backstories, what their objectives are, what they're fighting against, what they're fighting for, what their parents were like, how they got there, who they had to kill or who they had to protect to go get that position. We're going to go build the full story, and that's what that campaign setting's for. So we have to go build the campaign setting, and then we can build all the stories to be released later. Yeah, we're still live. We haven't stopped here. All right, guys. Steam plus Lemuria is Steamuria. I'm not Styria. We could do Styria. I'm not against Steam and Lemuria. This actually kind of, I want to add these elements that are sort of esoteric in nature or even conspiracy in nature. I think that's pretty fun. So Steamuria could be a neat name. I don't know. But it's bedtime for me. You guys have been listening to msp-waves Radio. I'm your host, Agrod, currently Witness 9 on the Steem blockchain, founder of the Minnow Support Project and the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty Network, founder of Steem Monsters. Going to keep making cool projects and cool things, and hopefully you guys dig them. So please tell your friends about Steem Monsters. Get them to buy cards. Get them to buy decks. Get involved in the writing. And it's going to be awesome. Torko, thank you for your thoughts. To Jarvie, thank you for yours. Clayboyne, thank you for yours. For the people that are here for this whole time, giving us ideas on the stats and stories, you're awesome. And that's it for now. This is Agrod signing off. Good night, guys, and I'll see you in Discord tomorrow. Bye.